You want to know what $200,000 of humiliation looks like? It looks like a white woman at a charity gala telling you that you don't belong while examining your own grandmother's necklace. It sounds like her suggesting you try the more accessible auction items. It feels like 300 people watching and saying nothing. And it ends with her face draining of color when the auctioneer introduces you as the woman who funded the entire event. This is that story. Welcome, my beautiful family. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's proceed. The bathroom mirror in the Boston Ritz-Carlton penthouse reflected a woman who still felt like an imposter sometimes. Simone Baptiste stood in her champagne-colored silk dress, the fabric catching light like water, and fought the familiar tightness in her chest. Her hands moved to the clasp of her pearl earrings. Off. Back on. Off again. The repetitive motion usually calmed her, but tonight her fingers trembled. "You're doing it again." She turned. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, bow tie hanging loose around his neck, watching her with those dark eyes that had first caught her across a conference table 8 years ago. He still looked at her the same way, like she was the only person in any room. Doing what? She forced her hands still. The earring thing. You only do that when you're nervous. He crossed to her, his tall frame filling the space between them. His fingers replaced hers, gently fastening the earring. "Talk to me." Simone closed her eyes. His touch always steadied her. "It's the foundation gala. There will be 500 people there. Your world, not mine. Our world." He turned her to face him, hands on her shoulders. "You built half that world. The Harvest Foundation wouldn't exist without you." I know. She did know. Intellectually. But knowing and feeling were different countries. It's just, you won't be there when it starts. You'll be in that meeting until 9, and I'll be walking in alone, and you know how they look at me when you're not there. Daniel's jaw tightened. She felt the anger pulse through him before he controlled it. He was a black man who had built an empire in a world designed to stop him. He knew exactly how they looked at her. "I'll be there by 8:30. Latest." He pressed his forehead to hers. "But Simone, listen to me. You don't need me to validate your place in that room. You earned it. Every scholarship we funded, every kid whose life changed because you refused to give up, that's you. Not my money. You." She breathed him in. Sandalwood and something darker. "Home. I donated Mama's necklace," she said quietly. "For the auction." His hands stilled on her back. "The diamond one? From your grandmother. It's the right thing to do. She would have wanted it to help kids like me. Kids who need someone to believe in them." Simone pulled back to look at him. But Daniel, walking past it tonight, seeing it on display, knowing everyone will be looking at it and not knowing what it means. "Then tell them." He cupped her face. "Tell them about Detroit. About Mama Baptiste cleaning houses so you could eat. About full scholarships and impossible odds. Tell them your story. They don't want to hear my story. They want to see your wife looking beautiful and donating expensive jewelry. They want the fairy tale. Poor black girl meets billionaire prince." She heard the bitterness in her voice and hated it. Daniel kissed her forehead. Long and soft. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of every battle they'd fought together. "Then give them the fairy tale. But make them choke on it." Despite everything, she smiled. "You're terrible. I'm late for a conference call with Singapore." He checked his watch. A Patek Philippe that cost more than her childhood home. "But I'll be there before the auction starts. I promise. And Simone." He waited until she met his eyes. "You walk into that ballroom like you own it. Because functionally, you do. We funded the entire event." After he left, Simone returned to the mirror. She saw what others saw first. A black woman. 5'6", deep brown skin that her grandmother used to call midnight smooth. Natural hair styled in twists that fell past her shoulders. Cheekbones that could cut glass. The dress cost $12,000. The shoes, $800. The woman wearing them had grown up eating government cheese and wearing Goodwill clothes. She picked up her phone. One text from Jennifer Kim, her best friend and co-founder of the Harvest Foundation. "You got this, sis. Remember, they're lucky you showed up." Simone typed back, "I donated Mama's necklace. It's up for auction tonight." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Oh, Simone. She'd be so proud. I'm proud. Now go show them what grace under pressure looks like. Simone set the phone down. Picked up her clutch. Checked herself one more time. She was ready. She just wished she felt it. Across town in a converted brownstone in Beacon Hill, Lydia Ashford poured her third glass of wine and tried to ignore her brother's voice. "You're not listening to me, Lydia." "I'm listening, Trevor. I'm just choosing not to care." She settled into the leather armchair, crossing her legs. The red dress she'd chosen for tonight hit just above the knee. Tasteful. Classic. The kind of dress that announced you belonged without screaming for attention. Unlike certain people who'd infiltrated their circles lately. Trevor Ashford stood by the fireplace in his younger sister's living room and wondered, not for the first time, how they'd turned out so different. He was 43, she was 41. Same parents. Same private schools. Same summer homes in the Hamptons. But somewhere along the way, Lydia had calcified into something hard and bitter. "The foundation gala is important," he tried again. "My company donated $20,000. I need you to behave." "I always behave." Lydia sipped her wine. "I smile. I make conversation. I write checks. What more do you want? I want you not to make comments about who belongs at these events." Trevor's voice carried an edge now. "Like you did at the museum fundraiser. Or the hospital benefit. Or, if certain people feel uncomfortable when I point out they're clearly out of their depth, that's not my problem." Lydia set her glass down hard enough that wine sloshed over the rim. "Our circles used to mean something, Trevor. Now anyone with a lottery ticket and a rented dress can waltz in." "You're talking about that woman at the museum? The one you accused of stealing hors d'oeuvres?" "She was putting shrimp in her purse. She was taking them to her elderly mother sitting across the room." Trevor pinched the bridge of his nose. "Security confirmed it. You humiliated her. She was a retired judge, Lydia. A respected member of the community who happened to be black." Lydia stood abruptly. "Don't you dare make this about race. I treat everyone the same. I simply have standards for what these events should be. Your standards seem to target specific people." "That's not fair." But her voice wavered. Just for a second. Trevor softened slightly. His sister hadn't always been like this. There was a time when Lydia had been fun. Generous, even. But 2 failed marriages, a trust fund that never quite matched her spending, and watching Trevor's tech company explode into success while her own life plateaued had poisoned something inside her. She'd become a woman who patrolled boundaries because it was the only power she had left. "Come with me tonight," he said. "We'll have a nice time. You'll meet some interesting people. Just try to be kind. Can you do that?" Lydia picked up her clutch. A vintage Hermes, the only thing her second husband had left her besides debt and trust issues. "I'm always kind to people who deserve kindness." Trevor said nothing. What was there to say? They took separate cars to the gala. The Seaport Hotel ballroom had been transformed into something from a different century. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen stars. Round tables draped in ivory linen circled a dance floor that gleamed like dark water. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner, the music floating through conversations about market trends and vacation homes in Aspen. Simone arrived at 7:15, just as the first wave of guests filtered through the entrance. She handed her invitation to the young man at the door, watched his eyes widen slightly when he saw her name. "Mrs. Baptiste. Welcome. We're honored to have you." His deference was genuine. Daniel's name carried weight everywhere, but especially in Boston, where his tech company employed 5,000 people and his philanthropy funded half the city's arts programs. But Simone knew the weight was borrowed. Without Daniel beside her, she was just another black woman in a room full of white faces. She moved through the crowd, smiling at familiar faces, shaking hands with board members and donors. Eleanor Pembroke, an 80-year-old philanthropist who'd been funding causes since before Simone was born, pulled her into a hug that smelled like lavender and old money. "Your husband tells me you donated something special for tonight's auction," Eleanor said, her pale blue eyes twinkling. "Care to give an old woman a hint?" Simone hesitated, then decided truth was easier than deflection. "My grandmother's necklace. Diamonds and sapphires. It was the only valuable thing she owned." Eleanor's face shifted into something softer. "Oh, my dear. That must have been a difficult choice." "It was the right choice." Simone said the words firmly, willing herself to believe them. "Mama would have wanted it to matter, to change lives." "Then it will." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "You're a remarkable woman, Simone. Don't let anyone in this room make you forget that." The words landed like a life preserver. Simone held onto them as she continued through the ballroom, eventually making her way to the auction display area. And there it was. Behind glass, lit by focused spotlights that made every facet burn, Mama's necklace. Simone stopped breathing. The necklace was Victorian era, a delicate lattice of white gold holding diamonds and sapphires in a pattern that looked like frost on a window. It had belonged to Mama's grandmother originally, passed down through generations of women who'd known wealth before the Great Depression swallowed it whole. By the time Mama owned it, she was cleaning other people's houses in Detroit, but she'd never sold the necklace. Never pawned it. Not even when Simone needed glasses in 4th grade and they ate rice and beans for a month. "That's yours someday," Mama used to say, letting young Simone try it on. "When you're grown and strong. When you're the woman I know you'll be." Simone had worn it on her wedding day. Mama had been too sick to attend by then, dying of cancer in a hospital bed, while Simone married a man who'd transform her life. But the necklace had been there, connecting past to present, poverty to possibility. Mama died 6 weeks after the wedding. Never saw the penthouse. Never met Daniel's parents. Never knew that the granddaughter she'd raised on faith and stubbornness would become the wife of a billionaire. Beautiful piece. Simone turned. A woman stood beside her, blonde hair pulled back in a style that probably had a French name, wearing a red dress that screamed department store trying to look designer. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Yes," Simone said simply. "It is. I'm Lydia Ashford." The woman extended a hand with manicured nails painted the color of dried blood. "My brother is Trevor Ashford. Ashford Technologies? Perhaps you've heard of it." Simone shook her hand briefly. "Yes. Your brother donated generously to the foundation. We Ashfords have always believed in giving back." Lydia returned her attention to the necklace. "Though I have to say, I'm surprised they accepted such historical pieces for the auction. Usually these events feature more contemporary jewelry. You know, items from current designers that people actually want to wear." Something cold slid down Simone's spine. "The piece has significant historical value," Simone said evenly. "Victorian era. Excellent provenance." "Oh, I'm sure." Lydia's smile sharpened. "But between you and me, these old family pieces are usually more sentimental than actually valuable. The auction estimate seems optimistic." She leaned closer, her wine breath washing over Simone. "Just some friendly advice. If you're thinking of bidding on it, be careful. The reserve price might be out of reach for casual attendees." There it was. The assumption. Casual attendee. Simone felt the familiar heat rise in her chest. The anger she'd learned to bank and control. She turned to face Lydia fully. "I appreciate the concern," she said, voice quiet and clear. "But I'm familiar with the piece." "Are you?" Lydia's eyebrow arched. "Well, it's lovely that they offer tickets to these events to a wider audience now. Very inclusive. Though I do wonder about security sometimes. Last month someone walked out with a centerpiece." She laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. Can you imagine? Simone could feel other people starting to notice their conversation. Heads turning. Whispers behind champagne flutes. She needed to walk away. Daniel would be here soon. She could wait in the lobby, or find Eleanor, or literally anything other than standing here while this woman. But her feet wouldn't move. Because she'd been here before. Different rooms, different faces, same poison. And Mama's voice echoed in her head. Don't you ever shrink for people who should be ashamed of themselves. I should find my table, Simone said finally. Of course. Lydia's smile was all teeth now. Though you might want to check your invitation. The seating is arranged by donation level. Wouldn't want you to accidentally sit in the wrong section. So embarrassing. The words hit like a slap. Simone felt the ballroom tilt slightly. Felt every eye on her. Felt the weight of her grandmother's necklace behind glass, and the weight of her grandmother's memory on her shoulders, and the weight of being the only black woman in this corner of the room. She opened her mouth to respond. And that's when Lydia's brother appeared. There you are, Lydia. I've been looking. Trevor Ashford stopped, took in the scene, and his face drained of color. Oh no. Lydia, what did you do? Nothing. Lydia's voice climbed half an octave. I was just making conversation about the auction pieces. Helping this young woman understand how these events work. Trevor looked at Simone. Really looked. His eyes went wide with recognition, then horror. You're Simone Baptiste, he said quietly. I am. Simone kept her voice steady through sheer force of will. Oh my God. Trevor turned to his sister. Lydia, this is Daniel Baptiste's wife. Daniel Baptiste. The billionaire. The man who... He gestured helplessly around the ballroom. The man who funded this entire event. The color drained from Lydia's face so fast Simone almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I didn't. Lydia stammered. Excuse me, Simone said. She turned and walked away, head high, back straight, heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. She made it to the lobby before her hands started shaking. She made it to the bathroom before the tears came. And she made it into a stall before she let herself fall apart completely. Silk dress and diamond earrings and all the money in the world unable to protect her from the truth that still, after everything, in rooms like this, people saw her skin before they saw her. The bathroom door opened. Footsteps on marble. Simone. Eleanor's voice. Gentle and knowing. Simone unlocked the stall. Stepped out. Faced herself in the mirror next to the elderly white woman who'd never had to prove she belonged anywhere. She didn't know, Eleanor said softly. Not that it matters. Not that it excuses it. She knew exactly what she was doing. Simone wiped her eyes carefully, trying not to smudge her makeup. She saw a black woman looking at expensive jewelry and made assumptions. Story old as time. You're right. Eleanor handed her a tissue. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't follow you both when I saw her corner you. I'm sorry I let her speak to you that way without intervening. Simone looked at her. Why didn't you? Eleanor's face crumpled slightly. Because I'm a coward. Because stopping her would have meant making a scene. And women like me have been trained our whole lives to avoid scenes, even when scenes need to be made. She touched Simone's shoulder. I'm ashamed of myself. And I'm sorrier than I can say. The apology landed. It didn't fix anything, but it landed. Daniel will be here soon, Simone said. She straightened her dress, checked her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked composed, elegant, utterly in control. And then everyone will know who I am. And Lydia Ashford will realize she just publicly insulted one of the wealthiest women in Boston. Is that what you want? Eleanor asked. Public humiliation for her? Simone paused. What did she want? She wanted Lydia to hurt the way she hurt. She wanted that smug smile erased. She wanted justice, revenge, vindication. But mostly, she wanted to go home, climb into bed with her husband, and forget this night ever happened. I want, Simone said slowly, for people to see me. Not my husband's bank account. Not my skin color. not their assumptions. Me. Then show them, Eleanor said. Show all of them who you are. Simone looked at the elderly woman, at the kindness in her eyes and the genuine regret on her face. At an ally, late but present. Thank you, Simone said, for following me, for apologizing, for seeing what happened. It's the least I could do. Eleanor squeezed her hand. Now, shall we return to the ballroom? I believe your husband just arrived. I saw him in the entrance, looking rather like a man prepared to set fire to anyone who hurt his wife. Despite everything, Simone smiled. That sounds like Daniel. They walked back together, two women from different worlds, united in this moment by truth and its consequences. The auction was about to begin, and Lydia Ashford's world was about to end. Daniel Baptiste stood in the ballroom entrance and scanned the crowd with the focused intensity of a predator searching for wounded prey. His black tuxedo fit him like armor. At 6'3", he commanded attention without trying. People parted as he moved through the room, some greeting him, others simply watching the way lesser creatures watch apex predators pass. He found Simone near the auction display with Eleanor Pembroke. One look at his wife's face told him everything. Someone had hurt her. He crossed the distance in 6 strides, pulled her into his arms, and felt the slight tremor in her shoulders. She was holding herself together by threads. Who? His voice was quiet. Deadly. Daniel. Simone pulled back enough to look at him. Not here. Not now. Tell me who, and I'll handle it. I know you will. She touched his face, her palm warm against his jaw. But let me handle this my way. Please. He studied her eyes. Saw the hurt there, and the anger beneath it, and something else. Determination. His wife was many things, but fragile wasn't one of them. She'd survived poverty, racism, a world designed to break people who looked like her. She'd built a non-profit from nothing, changed thousands of lives, and married him despite his family's horror and high society's judgment. She could handle whatever this was. But it killed him to let her. Okay, he said finally. Your way. But I'm right here if you need me. I know. She kissed him softly. I always know. Eleanor cleared her throat delicately. The auction begins in 10 minutes. Perhaps we should find our seats. They moved together through the ballroom, Daniel's hand at the small of Simone's back. She felt his presence like a shield. With him beside her, the stairs changed quality. People saw them as a unit, a power couple, instead of seeing her as an interloper who'd somehow tricked her way into wealth. Their assigned table was front and center, marked with a small placard that read, Baptiste Family, Platinum Sponsors. Lydia Ashford sat 3 tables away. Simone watched the other woman's face when she noticed Daniel's arrival. Watched understanding dawn like a slow-motion car crash. Lydia's brother leaned close, whispering urgently. Lydia shook her head, still not quite believing. Bernard Whitmore, the auction organizer, approached their table. He was 50-something, gray at the temples, wearing nervousness like an ill-fitting suit. Mr. Baptiste, Mrs. Baptiste. He shook Daniel's hand with both of his own. Thank you so much for your incredible generosity. This event wouldn't be possible without your foundation's support. My wife's foundation, Daniel corrected smoothly. I just write the checks. She does the actual work. Bernard turned to Simone with a smile that looked painful. Yes, of course. Mrs. Baptiste, I wanted to personally thank you for the donation of your grandmother's necklace. It's the crown jewel of tonight's auction. We've had inquiries from collectors across the country. I'm glad it's generating interest. Simone kept her voice even. Professional. The money will fund scholarships for underprivileged students. That's what matters. Absolutely. Bernard hesitated, then lowered his voice. I also wanted to apologize. I saw what happened earlier with Ms. Ashford, and I should have intervened. I was concerned about causing a scene, but that's no excuse. Your presence here is an honor, and you should have been treated accordingly. Simone felt Daniel tense beside her. His hand found hers under the table, squeezed hard. Thank you for saying that, Simone said. "It takes courage to acknowledge these things." Bernard nodded gratefully and hurried away to prepare for the auction. Daniel leaned close to Simone's ear. "Tell me what she said." "Later." "Simone, later." She turned to face him fully. "Right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" He searched her face, then nodded once, sharply. "Always." The lights dimmed. The string quartet faded into silence. Bernard took the stage, microphone in hand, and the auction began. "Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 15th Annual Harvest Foundation Gala." His voice echoed through the ballroom. "Tonight, we gather to support an organization that has changed countless lives through education, mentorship, and opportunity. Before we begin the auction, I'd like to acknowledge some very special people." Simone felt her stomach clench. The Ashford family has been longtime supporters of various charitable causes in Boston. Trevor Ashford and Ashford Technologies have donated $20,000 to the Harvest Foundation this year. Trevor, please stand and be recognized. Polite applause. Trevor stood briefly, uncomfortable, then sat back down. Lydia beamed beside him, basking in reflected glory. "We also want to thank the Pembroke Foundation for their $10,000 contribution, and the Hartford Group for $15,000. More applause. More standing. More smiling. Simone's heart pounded. She knew what was coming. Had known since she walked into this ballroom. But knowing and experiencing were different creatures. Daniel's hand tightened on hers. "And now," Bernard continued, "I want to recognize our platinum sponsor. The person whose generosity made this entire evening possible. Who funded this venue, the catering, the music, and donated the most valuable piece in tonight's auction." The spotlight swept across the ballroom, searching. This foundation's work has provided scholarships to over 5,000 students in the past 8 years. Students who otherwise would never have had access to higher education. The woman who founded this organization started with nothing but a vision and an unshakable belief that every child deserves a chance. The spotlight found their table, locked onto Simone like a heat-seeking missile. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Simone Baptiste, founder and director of the Harvest Foundation." The applause started slowly, then built. Simone stood, Daniel rising with her, his hand still holding hers. She smiled, waved, tried to look gracious instead of terrified. 300 people stared at her, most with admiration, some with surprise, a few with poorly concealed shock, and Lydia Ashford with absolute horror. Mrs. Baptiste's husband, as many of you know, is Daniel Baptiste, founder and CEO of Vertex Solutions. Bernard gestured toward Daniel. His company has revolutionized cloud computing and employs over 5,000 people in the Boston area alone. But tonight isn't about his remarkable business achievements. Tonight is about the woman beside him. Simone wanted to sit down, wanted to disappear, wanted to be literally anywhere else. But she stood, because Mama hadn't raised a woman who ran. Simone Baptiste grew up in Detroit, raised by her grandmother after losing both parents in a car accident when she was 6 years old. Bernard's voice softened. She earned a full scholarship to the University of Michigan, graduated summa cum laude, and went on to earn her master's in social work from Boston University. She worked in nonprofit management for 8 years before founding the Harvest Foundation. The applause continued. Simone felt Daniel's thumb trace circles on her palm. Their private signal. "I'm here. I've got you." The necklace we're auctioning tonight belonged to Simone's grandmother, Gloria Baptiste. It's a Victorian-era piece, diamonds and sapphires, with an estimated value of $200,000. Every penny raised will go directly to scholarship funds. Bernard paused, letting that number sink in. $200,000. 20 times Trevor Ashford's donation. 10 times what Lydia had probably spent on her entire wardrobe. Simone risked a glance at Lydia's table. The other woman sat frozen, face drained of color, one hand clutching her wine glass so hard Simone half expected it to shatter. Trevor had his head in his hands. "So please," Bernard concluded, Join me in thanking Simone and Daniel Baptiste for their extraordinary generosity and vision. The applause peaked. Simone sat down, legs shaking, heart racing. Daniel's arm came around her shoulders, pulled her close. "You okay?" he murmured. "No." She was honest with him. Always. "But I will be. Want to leave? We can leave right now." She almost said yes. Almost grabbed her clutch and walked out and never looked back. But that necklace was still on display. Mama's necklace. The last physical piece of the woman who'd raised her, loved her, believed in her when the world said a black girl from the Detroit projects had no business dreaming. "I'm staying," Simone said. "I want to see who buys it. I want to know it matters." Daniel kissed her temple. "Then we stay." The auction began properly. A week in Tuscany. A private yacht experience. A painting by some artist Simone didn't recognize. Items sold quickly. Paddles rising. Amounts climbing. The energy in the room was electric, competitive, the way rich people got when spending money on good causes let them feel virtuous while also showing off. Simone barely paid attention. She was too aware of Lydia Ashford 3 tables away. Too conscious of the whispers spreading through the ballroom as people realized what had happened before the auction. Eleanor Pembroke leaned across the table. "She's leaving." Simone looked up. Lydia had stood, grabbing her clutch, moving toward the exit. Trevor reached for her arm, but she yanked away. Her face was blotchy, eyes wet. Good, Simone thought. Then immediately felt guilty for thinking it. No, not guilty. Why should she feel guilty? Lydia had insulted her, demeaned her, questioned her right to exist in this space based on nothing but skin color and assumptions. Lydia's humiliation was self-inflicted. "Let her go," Daniel said quietly. He'd been watching too. "I am." "You're staring at her like you want to follow." Simone turned to him. "What if I do? Then I'm coming with you." "No." She stood, smoothing her dress. "This is mine to handle. You said you'd trust me." Daniel looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he nodded. 5 minutes. "Then I'm coming to find you." Simone made her way through the ballroom, smiling at people who tried to stop her, politely deflecting conversation. She caught up to Lydia in the hallway outside the bathrooms, where the noise of the auction faded to a distant murmur. "Lydia!" The other woman spun around. Mascara tracked down her cheeks. Her lipstick was smeared where she'd clearly been biting her lip. "What do you want?" Lydia's voice cracked. "Come to gloat." "No." Simone stopped a few feet away. Kept her voice level. "I came to ask why." "Why what?" "Why you assumed I didn't belong. Why you felt the need to tell me about donation levels and security and what I could or couldn't afford." Simone took a step closer. "Was it my dress? My jewelry? My face? What specifically told you I was beneath you?" Lydia's mouth opened. Closed. No words came. "I need you to say it," Simone pressed. "I need you to be honest for once in your life. What did you see when you looked at me?" "I saw." Lydia's voice was barely a whisper. "I saw someone who didn't look like they belonged. Because I'm black." "No." But the word had no conviction. "Yes." Simone felt something break open inside her. 8 years of these moments. 8 years of proving herself in rooms that questioned her presence. 8 years of being Daniel's wife and still being treated like the help. You saw a black woman looking at expensive jewelry and your brain went to one place. Criminal. Poor. Out of place. Not one of us. That's not. Lydia tried again. "I didn't." "You did." Simone's voice sharpened. "You absolutely did. And the worst part? You thought you were being helpful. Protective, even. Warning me about prices I couldn't afford, suggesting I sit in a different section, making sure I knew my place." Tears spilled down Lydia's face. "I'm sorry." "Are you? Are you sorry you said it, or sorry you got caught?" Lydia flinched like she'd been slapped. The bathroom door opened. A young woman in a server's uniform stepped out, took one look at them, and quickly walked away. I grew up with nothing, Simone said into the silence. My grandmother cleaned houses 6 days a week. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Detroit where the heat didn't work half the winter. I wore second-hand clothes and ate free lunch at school and studied by flashlight when the electricity got shut off. Lydia stared at her, mascara-stained and miserable. But my grandmother never let me feel poor. She never let me think I was less than anyone. She taught me that dignity isn't about money, that grace is a choice, that I belonged anywhere I chose to stand. Simone's voice broke slightly. And then I walk into rooms like this, wearing a dress that costs more than my childhood home, and women like you tell me I don't belong. I'm so sorry, Lydia whispered again. That necklace you insulted? Simone continued. It's the only thing my grandmother had left from her own grandmother. The only piece of a better life before the Depression destroyed everything. She could have sold it 100 times. Could have pawned it when we needed rent money or groceries or when I needed a winter coat. But she never did. She saved it. For me. Lydia was openly crying now. I donated it tonight because that's what Mama would have wanted. For it to matter. To change lives the way she changed mine. Simone's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. And you looked at it and saw nothing but an opportunity to put me in what you thought was my place. I didn't know. Lydia's voice was ragged. I swear I didn't know who you were. That's the problem. Simone leaned forward slightly. You didn't know and you didn't care to know. You made assumptions. And those assumptions told me everything I needed to know about you. The auction applause filtered through the walls. Someone had just bought something expensive. Lydia wiped at her face with shaking hands. What do you want from me? An apology. Money. I'll write a check. I'll donate to your foundation. Just please, don't destroy me over this. Simone studied the broken woman in front of her. Felt no satisfaction. No triumph. Just exhaustion. I don't want your money, Simone said quietly. I don't want anything from you except for you to understand what you did. To feel it. To carry it. And maybe, if you have any decency left, to be different. She turned to walk away. Wait. Lydia's voice stopped her. How do you do it? How do you walk into rooms where people look at you like I looked at you and not hate everyone? Simone turned back. Who says I don't? The honesty landed between them. But hating you doesn't free me, Simone continued. It just gives you more power. So I choose something else. I choose to be so undeniably myself that people like you have to confront what their assumptions cost them. She left Lydia standing in the hallway and returned to the ballroom. To her husband. Her table. Her donated necklace about to be sold. To the life she'd built in spite of everything. Daniel stood as she approached. You okay? Getting there. She slid into her seat, accepted the champagne he handed her. And her. Also getting there. Simone sipped the champagne. In a different way. On stage, Bernard held up the next auction item. A piece of artwork from a local artist. But Simone's attention was on the glass case behind him. On the necklace that held her entire history. On the moment rapidly approaching when it would belong to someone else. And on the choice she'd made in the hallway. Grace over rage. Truth over revenge. Mama would be proud. Lydia Ashford did not return to the ballroom. Simone watched the empty chair at Trevor's table and felt the weight of their hallway conversation pressing against her chest. She'd said what needed saying. Done what Mama would have wanted. Stood her ground without cruelty. Spoken truth without venom. So why did she still feel hollowed out? Daniel's thumb traced patterns on her wrist under the table. He knew her tells. The way she went quiet when emotions threatened to overwhelm her. The way she held herself rigid when all she wanted was to fall apart. We can still leave, he murmured. Say the word. No. Simone straightened in her chair. I'm seeing this through. On stage, Bernard was wrapping up the sale of a golf package to Martha's Vineyard. $15,000 to a man in the back who looked like he'd never played golf in his life but wanted the story. The necklace was next. Simone knew because she'd memorized the auction order. had studied it obsessively for 3 days, trying to prepare herself for this moment. Trying to convince herself she was ready to watch strangers bid on the last piece of her grandmother she had left. She wasn't ready. Would never be ready. But she was doing it anyway. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bernard said, his voice taking on a reverent quality, "our final item of the evening is truly extraordinary." 2 attendants wheeled out the glass case. The spotlight caught the necklace and it exploded into light. Diamonds throwing rainbow fractals across the ceiling. Sapphires deep as midnight oceans. The ballroom went silent. This Victorian-era necklace features 18 carats of diamonds and 12 carats of sapphires set in white gold. Bernard gestured to the case like a priest presenting a holy relic. It dates to approximately 1880 and has been authenticated by 3 independent appraisers. The craftsmanship is museum quality. The condition is flawless. Simone stopped breathing. But the true value of this piece isn't in its materials or its age. Bernard paused, letting the moment expand. It's in its history. This necklace has been passed down through 4 generations of the Baptiste family. It survived the Great Depression. It survived poverty and hardship. It survived because the women who owned it refused to let go of beauty, even when everything else was taken from them. Daniel's hand covered hers completely now, anchoring her. Tonight, Simone Baptiste has chosen to donate this irreplaceable family heirloom so that other families might have opportunities her grandmother never had. The entire proceeds will fund full scholarships for students from underserved communities. The applause started soft, then built. Simone felt 300 pairs of eyes on her. Felt their pity, their admiration, their judgment. Felt the weight of her choice crushing down like atmosphere. "The opening bid is $50,000, Bernard announced. Paddles shot up across the room. $50,000 to the gentleman in the blue jacket. Do I hear 60? More paddles. The bids climbed fast. 70,000. 80. 90. Simone watched strangers compete for the necklace Mama used to let her wear while they danced in the kitchen to Motown records. The necklace that had witnessed 4 generations of black women surviving, thriving, refusing to break. 100,000. 120. 150. The bidding slowed. Only 3 paddles remained up. A woman in emerald green near the back. An older man by the bar. And someone Simone couldn't see from her angle. 175, Bernard called. Do I hear 200? The woman in green dropped out. 200,000. The older man's voice carried across the room. The third bidder raised their paddle. 225. Simone recognized that voice. Turned to look. Trevor Ashford stood at his table, paddle high, face set in determination. Daniel stiffened beside her. What is he doing? I don't know, Simone whispered. 250, the older man countered. 300,000. Trevor didn't hesitate. The ballroom erupted in whispers. That was more than the appraised value. More than any single auction item had ever sold for at this event. The older man shook his head, lowered his paddle. 300,000 going once, Bernard said, excitement bleeding into his professional tone. Going twice. Trevor kept his paddle up, eyes locked on the necklace. Sold. Bernard brought down his gavel. To Mr. Trevor Ashford for $300,000. The applause was thunderous. Simone sat frozen. Her grandmother's necklace had just been bought by the brother of the woman who'd insulted her. The math of it refused to make sense in her head. Daniel leaned close. That's interesting. That's something. Simone couldn't identify the emotion crawling up her throat. Relief. Anger. Confusion. Trevor made his way to the stage to complete the paperwork. He moved like a man walking to his execution. Shoulders back, head high, but something defeated in his eyes. The auction concluded with thank yous and final remarks. People began standing, stretching, moving toward the bar for post-auction drinks and networking. The string quartet resumed playing. Simone stood on unsteady legs. I need air. I'm coming with you. Daniel was already moving. No. She touched his arm. Please. Just 5 minutes alone. I promise I'm okay. I just need to process this. He studied her face, clearly torn between respecting her request and his instinct to protect her from everything, including her own feelings. 5 minutes, he agreed finally. Then I'm coming to find you. Simone slipped out of the ballroom and found her way to the hotel's terrace. November in Boston meant cold, but she welcomed it. The shock of freezing air against her skin grounded her back in her body. The terrace overlooked the harbor. City lights reflected on black water. Boats bobbed at their moorings. The world continued turning, indifferent to her emotional chaos. She heard footsteps behind her. Mrs. Baptiste? She turned. Trevor Ashford stood in the terrace doorway, still holding the leather portfolio with his auction purchase receipt. May I speak with you for a moment? Everything in Simone wanted to say no. To walk away. To be done with this family and this night and all of it. But Mama's voice whispered, listen first. Judge after. All right, she said. Trevor stepped onto the terrace, letting the door close behind him. He kept a respectful distance, hands shoved in his pockets against the cold. I want to apologize, he started. For my sister. For what she said to you. There's no excuse for her behavior. No, Simone agreed. There isn't. She's not a bad person. She's just. He struggled for words. Lost. Bitter. Clinging to a version of the world that never really existed. That doesn't make what she did hurt less. I know. Trevor looked out at the harbor. I've made excuses for her for years. Told myself she didn't mean it, that she was just old-fashioned, that her intentions were good even if her words were bad. But tonight I realized I've been enabling her. My silence has been permission. Simone said nothing. Let him sit with that realization. I bought the necklace, Trevor continued after a moment, because I wanted to do something. To make amends somehow. I know it's not enough. Nothing could be enough. But I wanted you to know that not everyone in my family shares Lydia's views. You bought a $300,000 necklace to prove you're not racist? Simone kept her voice flat. Trevor flinched. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He turned to face her fully. I meant that your grandmother's necklace deserves to be owned by someone who understands its value beyond money. And I don't. I could never understand what that piece means to your family, your history. So I want to give it back to you. Simone's breath caught. What? The necklace belongs with you. Trevor pulled an envelope from his jacket. I'll still make the $300,000 donation to your foundation. Consider it my attempt at restitution. But please, take the necklace back. It should stay in your family. Simone stared at the envelope. At this white man trying to fix his sister's racism with money and gestures. At the complexity of good intentions tangled with guilt and privilege. I donated it for a reason, she said quietly. Because holding on to things, even precious things, can keep us trapped in the past. I wanted it to matter more than memory. It will matter. Trevor held out the envelope. $300,000 will change lives. But the necklace itself, the physical object, that should be yours. You shouldn't have to lose family history to fund your mission. Simone's hands trembled as she took the envelope. Inside was the certificate of authenticity, the purchase receipt, and a personal check for $300,000 made out to the Harvest Foundation. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because tonight I watched my sister reveal the ugliest parts of herself. And I realized I have a choice. I can be the person who makes excuses and looks away. Or I can be the person who tries to do better. Trevor's voice was steady now. This doesn't fix anything. I know that. But maybe it's a start. The terrace door opened again. Daniel appeared, took one look at Trevor, and his entire body went rigid. Is there a problem here? No problem. Simone held up the envelope. Mr. Ashford just made a very generous donation to the foundation. And he's returning Mama's necklace to me. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Is that so? It is. Trevor extended his hand. Mr. Baptiste, I'm Trevor Ashford. I owe you and your wife an enormous apology. Daniel looked at the offered hand for a long moment, then took it. The handshake was brief, professional, and carried the weight of unspoken warning. Your sister made my wife cry tonight, Daniel said quietly. That's not something I forget easily. I understand. Trevor didn't look away. And for what it's worth, I'm ashamed. Of her, and of myself for not stopping her sooner. Words are easy. Daniel's voice could have cut glass. Actions matter. What are you going to do about your sister? Trevor's shoulders sagged slightly. I honestly don't know. She's family. But tonight showed me I can't keep enabling her prejudice. Something has to change. See that it does. Daniel put his arm around Simone. Now if you'll excuse us, my wife and I are going home. Trevor nodded and retreated back into the ballroom. Simone leaned into Daniel's warmth. That was intense. That was restrained. Daniel kissed the top of her head. I wanted to throw him off this terrace. I know. But you handled it. I did. She looked up at him. He's giving me back the necklace. And still donating the full $300,000. Good. Daniel's expression softened slightly. That necklace belongs with you. I should have bought it myself. I would have stopped you. I know. That's why I was going to do it anonymously. Despite everything, Simone smiled. You were going to secretly buy my grandmother's necklace? Absolutely. He cupped her face. You don't get to sacrifice everything, Simone. Some things you get to keep. She kissed him then. Long and soft and full of 8 years of love that had survived his family's disapproval and society's judgment, and nights like this when the world reminded them that being black and wealthy didn't protect you from being black first. When they pulled apart, she saw Eleanor Pembroke watching from the terrace doorway. The elderly woman smiled, waved, and disappeared back inside. Take me home, Simone said. Best idea you've had all night. They collected their things and left through the side entrance, avoiding the crowd still networking in the ballroom. In the car, Daniel drove with one hand on the wheel and one hand holding Simone's. Neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable, processing. Simone's phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Kim. Just saw the auction results. $300,000. Simone. Do you know how many kids we can send to college with that? You're amazing. Call me tomorrow. I love you. Another text, this one from Eleanor Pembroke. You showed remarkable grace tonight, my dear. I'm honored to know you. Come have tea with me next week. We'll talk about expanding the foundation's reach. I have some ideas. Simone set her phone down and looked out at Boston passing by. The city lights blurred through sudden tears. Hey! Daniel glanced over. Talk to me. I'm okay. She wiped her eyes. I'm just tired, and sad, and relieved, and angry, and grateful, all at once. That's a lot of emotions. It was a lot of night. They drove in silence for another few minutes before Daniel spoke again. What Lydia said to you. You never told me the specifics. Simone took a breath. Then told him everything. The comments about the necklace being too expensive. The suggestions she was in the wrong section. The implications she didn't belong. Every small cut that had bled together into one deep wound. By the time she finished, Daniel's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I want to destroy her, he said flatly. I want to use every resource I have to make sure she never shows her face in Boston society again. I know. But you're going to tell me not to. I'm going to tell you that she's already destroyed. You saw her face when Bernard announced who I was. You saw Trevor's shame. That family is going to tear itself apart without any help from us. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he exhaled slowly. You're better than me. I'm not better. I'm just tired of carrying hate. It's too heavy. They pulled into their building's parking garage. Took the private elevator to the penthouse. walked through rooms filled with expensive furniture and original artwork and all the trappings of wealth that couldn't protect Simone from being seen as less than in rooms full of white faces. In their bedroom, Daniel helped her out of the champagne dress, unzipped it slowly, pressed kisses to her shoulders, held her like she was something precious and breakable even though they both knew she was steel wrapped in silk. Simone put on one of his old MIT shirts and climbed into bed. Daniel joined her, pulling her close until her head rested on his chest and she could hear his heartbeat. Steady. Sure. Home. I'm proud of you, he said into the darkness. For tonight. For how you handled everything. For being you. I love you. Her voice was muffled against his shirt. I love you more. Not possible. He kissed her forehead. Sleep, baby. Tomorrow this all gets easier. But Simone wasn't sure that was true. Tomorrow she'd still be a black woman in a world that questioned her worth. Tomorrow there would be other Lydias in other rooms making other assumptions. Tomorrow the fight would continue. But tonight, she was here. In her husband's arms. With her grandmother's necklace returning to her. With $300,000 that would change lives. Tonight, she'd won. Even if winning felt exhausting. Even if grace felt like bleeding. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Outside, Boston slept. Inside, Simone dreamed of her grandmother dancing in a kitchen that no longer existed, wearing a necklace that had survived everything. Some things were too precious to lose. Some fights were too important to abandon. And some love was strong enough to heal wounds the world kept ripping open. Simone woke to sunlight streaming through floor-length windows and the smell of coffee. She rolled over to find Daniel's side of the bed empty but still warm. The clock on the nightstand read 9:47 a.m. She'd slept nearly 12 hours, her body finally surrendering to the exhaustion it had been holding at bay. The events of the previous night felt distant now. Dreamlike. Had Lydia Ashford really insulted her in front of half of Boston's elite? Had Trevor really bought back Mama's necklace? Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. 17 missed calls. 32 text messages. Her stomach dropped. The first text was from Jennifer, sent at 7:23 a.m. Simone. Call me. It's all over the news. News. Simone sat up fast, heart pounding. She scrolled through the messages. Most were from people she barely knew. Board members. Donors. Acquaintances from Daniel's business circles. One was from Eleanor Pembroke, sent at 8:15 a.m. Dear, I'm so sorry. I didn't think anyone would leak it to the press. Call me when you're awake. Leak what to the press? Simone threw on Daniel's MIT shirt from last night and padded barefoot into the kitchen. Daniel stood at the counter, coffee mug in hand, iPad in front of him. His jaw was tight. He looked up when she entered. Morning. His voice was carefully neutral. What happened? Simone crossed to him. Why is everyone calling me? Daniel turned the iPad toward her. The Boston Herald homepage filled the screen. The headline made her stomach plummet. Billionaire's wife humiliated at charity gala. Racist encounter shocks Boston elite. Below it, a photo. Simone standing in front of the necklace display, face composed but eyes revealing hurt. Lydia beside her, mouth open mid-insult, expression twisted with contempt. Someone had photographed the confrontation. Oh God! Simone sank onto a bar stool. There's more. Daniel scrolled down. The article detailed everything. Lydia's comments. The assumption Simone didn't belong. The public revelation of Simone's identity. Trevor's $300,000 purchase and donation. Even included quotes from anonymous attendees describing the tension, the shock, the aftermath. One quote jumped out. It was devastating to watch. Mrs. Baptiste maintained perfect composure while being verbally assaulted based on nothing but the color of her skin. The silence from other guests was equally damning. Who wrote this? Simone's voice came out strangled. Melissa Zhang. Society reporter. Daniel set his coffee down. She was at the gala. Apparently she witnessed the whole thing and decided it was newsworthy. Newsworthy. Simone laughed without humor. My humiliation is newsworthy. Your grace under racism is newsworthy. Daniel moved around the counter to stand beside her. The article isn't painting you as a victim, Simone. It's painting you as exactly what you are. Strong, dignified, unbreakable. Simone, read further. The article included background on the Harvest Foundation, her work with underprivileged youth, her own history growing up in poverty. It mentioned Daniel's empire but focused primarily on Simone's accomplishments. And it absolutely destroyed Lydia Ashford. Ms. Ashford, 41, sister of tech millionaire Trevor Ashford, has a history of what some describe as gatekeeping behavior at charitable events. Multiple sources who spoke on condition of anonymity described similar incidents where Ashford questioned the presence of people of color at high society gatherings. The article included a statement from Trevor, issued at 6 a.m. I am deeply ashamed of my sister's behavior and my own failure to intervene. Mrs. Baptiste deserves an apology that words cannot adequately convey. I have made a significant donation to the Harvest Foundation and will be implementing mandatory diversity and inclusion training at Ashford Technologies. We must do better. There was no statement from Lydia. Simone's phone rang. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen. She answered. Jen. Oh, thank God you're awake. Have you seen it? Are you okay? Do you need me to come over? I can be there in 20 minutes. I'm okay. Simone wasn't sure that was true, but she said it anyway. Just processing. This is huge, Simone. Like, national news huge. CNN picked it up an hour ago. The Today Show wants you for an interview on Monday. What? Simone looked at Daniel. He nodded grimly. No. Absolutely not. I know you hate publicity, but this could be good for the foundation. People are donating like crazy. We've raised another $50,000 since the article dropped. Everyone wants to support you. Simone felt the walls closing in. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. Becoming a story. A symbol. The black woman who faced down racism with grace and dignity. Packaged and commodified and turned into inspiration porn for white people who wanted to feel better about systemic oppression. I need to think, Simone said. Can you handle the foundation calls today? Tell everyone I'm unavailable for comment. Of course. But Simone, you should know something else. Jennifer's voice dropped. Lydia Ashford tried to check herself into McLean Hospital this morning. Psychiatric evaluation. Her brother confirmed it to the press an hour ago. The blood drained from Simone's face. She's claiming the public scrutiny triggered a mental health crisis, Jennifer continued. Some people are saying she's playing victim. Others are saying we should have compassion. It's a whole thing. Simone closed her eyes. I never wanted this. I know, honey. But it's happening whether you wanted it or not. Call me later, okay? I love you. After Jennifer hung up, Simone sat in silence. Daniel didn't try to fill it. He just stood beside her, present and steady. She's in the hospital, Simone finally said. I heard. Because of me. No. Daniel's voice was firm. Because of her own actions and their consequences. You didn't do this to her, Simone. She did it to herself. But if I hadn't confronted her, if I just walked away, then she would have continued treating people like garbage and facing no consequences. Daniel turned her to face him. You gave her truth. What she does with that truth is her responsibility, not yours. Simone's phone rang again. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Different unknown number. They found my cell number, she said quietly. Give it to me. Daniel held out his hand. I'll handle the calls. No. I need to deal with this. But even as she said it, another call came through. And another. The intercom buzzed. Their building's doorman. Mr. Baptiste? I'm sorry to disturb you, but there are several reporters in the lobby asking to speak with Mrs. Baptiste. Should I send them away? Daniel pressed the intercom button. Yes, Marcus. No one gets up here without our explicit permission. If they continue harassing you, call building security. Understood, sir. Simone stood abruptly, needing to move. She paced to the windows overlooking Boston Harbor. The November sky was gray, threatening snow. Boats rocked in their slips. The world looked exactly as it had yesterday, but everything felt different. I need to leave, she said suddenly. Leave where? The city. Just for a few days. Somewhere quiet where no one knows me and I can think. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. The cottage in Maine. We'll go today. You have meetings all week. They can wait. His tone left no room for argument. You're more important than any meeting. Simone turned to face him. Thank you. Always. He pulled out his phone. I'll call the caretaker, have him stock the house. We can leave in an hour. While Daniel made arrangements, Simone showered and dressed in jeans and a soft blue sweater. Comfortable clothes. Anonymous clothes. She pulled her hair into a simple ponytail and skipped makeup entirely. She looked like herself. Not the polished philanthropist. Not the billionaire's wife. Just Simone. Her phone continued ringing. She turned it off completely. They packed light. Just enough for a few days. Daniel loaded everything into his Range Rover while Simone left a note for their housekeeper explaining they'd be gone. The elevator ride to the parking garage felt like descending into a bunker. Safe. Protected. Away from the chaos exploding above ground. But when the garage door opened to let them exit, 3 reporters stood on the sidewalk with cameras. Mrs. Baptiste, can we get a statement? How do you feel about Lydia Ashford's hospitalization? Is it true you're considering a lawsuit? Daniel didn't slow down. He pulled into traffic smoothly, ignoring the shouts, the flashing cameras, the hunger for a story that would feed on her pain. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what? For not being able to protect you from this. Simone reached over and took his hand. You can't protect me from being black in America, Daniel. No amount of money or power can do that. They drove in silence through Boston, then north on Route 1 toward Maine. The city gave way to suburbs, then small towns, then forests thick with bare trees reaching toward the gray sky. Simone watched the landscape change and felt something in her chest loosen slightly. 2 hours later, they turned onto a dirt road that wound through pine woods. The cottage appeared at the end, a weathered gray structure perched on a rocky cliff overlooking the Atlantic. They'd bought it 3 years ago as an escape from the relentless pace of Boston. Inside smelled like wood smoke and salt air. The caretaker had been there. Fresh firewood stacked by the hearth. Groceries in the kitchen. Heat turned on. Simone walked through the small rooms, touching familiar surfaces. The overstuffed couch where she'd read dozens of books. The kitchen table where she and Daniel had spent hours talking about everything and nothing. The bedroom with windows facing the ocean. This place held no expectations. No performance. Just them. Daniel built a fire while Simone made tea. They settled on the couch together, her feet in his lap, watching flames consume wood. I keep thinking about her, Simone said eventually. Lydia. Wondering what she's feeling right now. Probably regret. But what kind? Regret for what she said. Or regret for getting caught saying it. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Does it matter? I think it does. Simone sipped her tea. The warmth spread through her chest. Because if she only regrets getting caught, nothing changes. She'll just learn to hide it better. But if she actually regrets the harm, if she actually sees what her assumptions cost, then maybe there's hope. Hope for what? Redemption. Hope for all of us. Simone set her mug down. I'm so tired of being angry, Daniel. I'm tired of carrying rage against every white person who looks at me and sees a threat or an intruder or someone less than. It's exhausting. But if people can actually change, if confrontation can lead to growth instead of just more defensiveness, then maybe this fight is worth it. Daniel pulled her closer. You shouldn't have to fight at all. You should be able to exist in peace. But I can't. We both know that. She looked up at him. So the question becomes, how do I fight without destroying myself in the process? By taking breaks like this. By letting people who love you carry some of the weight. By accepting that you don't have to be strong every second of every day. Simone pressed her face into his shoulder. He smelled like home. Like safety. Like the one place in the world where she could completely fall apart and know she'd be put back together. "Tell me about your grandmother," Daniel said softly. "Tell me about Mama." So she did. She told him about Sunday mornings in a tiny Detroit apartment, Mama singing hymns while cooking breakfast. About the way Mama never complained, even when her knees ached from scrubbing other people's floors. About learning to read at Mama's side, both of them huddled under blankets because the heat had been shut off. She told him about the necklace. How Mama would take it out on special occasions. Let young Simone wear it while they danced to Aretha Franklin. How it represented a family history Simone barely knew, ancestors who'd been enslaved, then freed, then prosperous, then poor again. She used to say that necklace proved we'd survived everything, Simone said. Wars and poverty and racism and loss. As long as we had it, we could survive anything else too. "And now you have it back," Daniel murmured. "Trevor returning it means something." Does it? Simone wasn't sure. Or is it just a wealthy white man trying to buy absolution? Maybe both things can be true. They sat in silence, watching the fire burn low. Outside, the ocean crashed against rocks. Relentless. Eternal. Indifferent to human drama. Simone's mind drifted back to the ballroom. To the moment before everything exploded. When she'd stood in front of that glass case looking at her grandmother's legacy and a stranger had decided she didn't belong. What if she'd walked away? What if she'd let Lydia's comments slide, avoided confrontation, chosen peace over truth? Would she feel better now? Or worse? She'd never know. She'd chosen truth. And truth had consequences she was still learning to live with. "I need to make a statement," she said suddenly. "Not an interview. Not a whole press conference. Just something written. So people know where I stand." Daniel nodded. "I'll help you write it. Tomorrow." Simone closed her eyes. "Tonight I just want to be here. With you. Away from everything. Then that's what we'll do." He carried her to bed as the sun set over the Atlantic. They made love slowly, tenderly, reconnecting in the way bodies do when words run out. Afterward, wrapped in blankets in each other, Simone felt something shift. The anger was still there. The hurt remained. But underneath it, something else. Determination. Purpose. The knowledge that she'd survived this and would survive whatever came next. Because she was Mama's granddaughter. And Mama's granddaughters knew how to endure. Sunday morning arrived cold and clear. Simone woke to find Daniel already up, standing at the bedroom window with coffee in hand, watching waves crash against the rocks below. "You're thinking loud," she said, voice rough with sleep. He turned, smiled slightly. "Guilty. What about?" "Everything. You. The foundation. What happens when we go back to Boston?" He crossed to the bed, sat on the edge. "And something else. Something I should probably tell you." Simone pushed herself up against the headboard. "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous. Just complicated." Daniel set his coffee on the nightstand. "My mother called yesterday. While you were sleeping." Simone's stomach tightened. Daniel's mother. Catherine Baptiste. A woman who'd spent 8 years making it clear that Simone was not the daughter-in-law she'd envisioned for her only son. What did she want? She saw the article. Saw what happened at the gala. Daniel rubbed his face. "She wanted to know if we were okay. If you were okay." That's surprisingly maternal of her. "She also wanted to remind me that she warned us this would happen. That being in the public eye, being part of that world, would expose you to exactly this kind of treatment." His voice was bitter. As if it's the world's fault and not the people in it. Simone had met Catherine Baptiste exactly 3 times. Once when Daniel first introduced them, awkward and tense over dinner at an exclusive restaurant where Simone had felt every eye judging her. Once at their engagement party, where Catherine had spent the entire evening introducing Daniel to more suitable women. And once at their wedding, where Catherine had worn black and left before the reception. "She's never going to accept me," Simone said quietly. "You know that, right?" "I know." Daniel took her hand. "And I need you to know that I don't care. I chose you. I will always choose you. My mother's approval isn't a condition of our marriage. But it hurts you that she won't bend. What hurts me is watching her miss out on knowing the most extraordinary person I've ever met." He kissed her knuckles. "Her loss, not mine." Simone pulled him closer, rested her forehead against his. "Tell me about the first time you saw me. The real version, not the story you tell at parties." Daniel smiled against her skin. "You want the truth? Always. I thought you were going to throw me out of your office." It was September 2017. Simone had been running a small non-profit called Hope House, providing after-school programs for kids in Roxbury. The organization operated on a shoestring budget, grant money that barely covered rent and supplies, volunteers who gave more than they had to give. Daniel Baptiste had shown up unannounced. Worth $3 billion at 30 years old, tech genius who'd built Vertex Solutions from his MIT dorm room. He'd read an article about Hope House, decided he wanted to donate, and simply walked in. Simone had been in her office, a converted storage closet with a desk she'd bought at Goodwill and a laptop held together with duct tape. She'd been on the phone with a landlord, negotiating a payment extension because 2 of their major donors had backed out that month. "I told you I'd have it by Friday," she'd been saying, voice tight with stress she couldn't afford to show. "Yes, I understand you have bills too. Friday. I promise." She'd hung up and looked up to find a tall, handsome black man in an expensive suit standing in her doorway. "We're closed," she'd said automatically. "I'm Daniel Baptiste." The name had meant nothing to her. She'd been too busy keeping Hope House alive to follow tech news or business magazines. "Congratulations. We're still closed. I want to donate to your organization." "Great. Website's on the door. You can donate online." She'd turned back to her laptop, mentally calculating how much she could pull from her personal account to make Friday's rent payment. "I was thinking more like $500,000. Simone had frozen. Looked up slowly. "Excuse me. $500,000. To start. I'd like to understand your model first, see how you operate, but I'm impressed by what I've read about your outcomes with at-risk youth." She'd studied him for a long moment. Rich men didn't just walk into struggling nonprofits and offer $500,000 without strings. "What do you want?" she'd asked bluntly. "To help. Nobody helps without wanting something back." Daniel had smiled then. Not the polished smile of someone trying to charm. Something more genuine. "You're right to be suspicious. But I'm serious. I have more money than I know what to do with, and I'd rather it go towards something meaningful than sit in accounts collecting interest." "Why us? Why Hope House?" "Because I grew up poor. Not as poor as these kids, but poor enough to know what it feels like to be written off before you've had a chance to prove yourself. Your program gives kids a chance. That matters to me." Simone had wanted to believe him, had wanted to grab that lifeline and pull Hope House back from the edge of collapse. But 8 years of fighting for every dollar, every grant, every moment of stability had taught her to trust nothing that seemed too good to be true. "I need to think about it," she'd said. "Fair enough." He'd handed her a business card. "Call me when you're ready to talk." He'd left, and Simone had sat in her closet office staring at that card. Daniel Baptiste. Vertex Solutions. A phone number. An email address. A potential salvation. She'd called Jennifer, her only full-time employee and closest friend. "Someone just offered us $500,000, she'd said. "What? Who?" "Some tech billionaire." Daniel Baptiste. Daniel Baptiste walked into our office? Jennifer had actually shrieked. "Simone, do you know who that is? He's like the Black Bill Gates. He's on Forbes lists. He's dated supermodels. He looked normal. He is normal. Well, as normal as a billionaire can be. He's known for being low-key. Invests in education stuff. This is huge, Simone. Or it's a setup. You're paranoid. I'm realistic. But she'd called him back 3 days later. They'd met for coffee. Talked for 4 hours about poverty and education and systemic barriers, and the kind of change that required both individual action and structural reform. He'd been smart. Not just book smart, though he clearly was that. But smart about people, about listening, about understanding that his money couldn't fix problems he didn't fully understand. I don't want to just write a check and walk away, he'd said. I want to be involved. Learn from you. Help build something sustainable. Why me? She'd asked. There are hundreds of nonprofits doing this work. Because when I walked into your office, you looked ready to fight me. Most people see my net worth and see opportunity. You saw a potential complication. That tells me you actually care about the work more than the money. He donated the $500,000. Then another $1 million 6 months later. Then became Hope House's primary funder, allowing Simone to expand from 1 location to 5, from 30 kids to 300. And somewhere in those meetings, those long conversations about mission and impact and the weight of trying to change lives one child at a time, they'd fallen in love. You were terrifying, Daniel said now, pulling Simone back to the present. Sitting in that tiny office, wearing a shirt with a coffee stain on it, telling me you didn't need my money. I did need your money. Desperately. But you were willing to walk away from it if it compromised your mission. That's when I knew. He cupped her face. That's when I knew you were different from everyone else in my world. Different how? Real. Uncomplicatedly yourself. You didn't care about my money or my name or what I could do for you. You cared about those kids. Everything else was secondary. Simone remembered those early months. The way Daniel would show up at Hope House after work, tie loosened, helping kids with homework or playing basketball in the small courtyard. The way he'd ask questions and actually listen to answers. The way he'd looked at her like she was doing something heroic instead of just doing her job. When did you know you loved me? She asked softly. Honestly? The first day. But I didn't admit it to myself until later. He smiled. You were explaining your theory about systemic poverty to a group of donors, and you got so passionate you knocked over a water glass. Just kept talking while water dripped off the table. And I thought, this woman is going to change my entire life. I did knock over that glass. Simone laughed. I was so embarrassed. You were magnificent. They'd dated quietly for 6 months before going public. Daniel's social circle had been predictably horrified. A nonprofit director from Detroit with no family money, no connections, no pedigree. His business partners had staged an intervention, warning him about gold diggers and ulterior motives. His mother had been worse. Catherine Baptiste had invited Simone to lunch. Just the two of them. An elegant restaurant in Back Bay where everything cost more than Simone's monthly grocery budget. I'm sure you're a lovely person, Catherine had said over untouched salads. But you have to understand what you're asking my son to sacrifice by being with you. I'm not asking him to sacrifice anything. You're asking him to sacrifice his reputation, his social standing, his future children's place in society. Catherine had sipped her wine. Daniel comes from a distinguished family. His grandfather was a federal judge. His father built a pharmaceutical empire. We have expectations. Expectations that include me being white? Simone had asked bluntly. Catherine had flinched. That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. I meant that Daniel has options. Women from appropriate backgrounds. Women who understand our world. Your world isn't better than mine. It's just different. My world will protect him from exactly what happened to you last night at that gala. Catherine had leaned forward. Do you really want to spend your life proving you belong? Fighting assumptions. Dealing with people like Lydia Ashford. The words had landed like punches. Because Catherine had been right. Marrying Daniel meant entering a world that didn't want her. That would question her, diminish her, assume the worst about her motivations and her worth. But walking away meant losing the man she loved. And Simone had lost enough in her life. "I love your son," she'd said quietly. "And he loves me. That's not nothing. Love isn't enough. Not in our world. Then maybe your world needs to change." Catherine had left that lunch disgusted. Had spent the next 2 years trying to sabotage their relationship. Setting Daniel up with more suitable women. Making comments about Simone's background. Skipping holidays if Simone would be present. The engagement had been particularly brutal. Catherine had refused to wear the family ring Simone was offered, claiming it was too precious for someone who wouldn't appreciate its history. The wedding had been worse. Catherine had shown up in black. Had sat in the back row despite being mother of the groom. Had left before the reception without saying goodbye to her son. Daniel had pretended it didn't hurt. But Simone had seen him watching the door during the reception, hoping his mother would come back. Hoping she'd change her mind and accept that her son had chosen happiness over expectation. She never had. "Your mom was right about one thing," Simone said now. "Love isn't always enough. Not against systems designed to keep people like me out. Then we build new systems." Daniel's voice was fierce. "Systems that include everyone. That judge people by character instead of pedigree. That make room for all kinds of love. That's idealistic. That's necessary." He stood, pulling her with him. "Come on. I want to show you something." He led her to the cottage's small study. On the desk sat a box she hadn't noticed before. Old, wooden, with a brass latch. "What is this?" "Open it." Simone lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was her grandmother's necklace. She gasped. "How?" "Trevor had it delivered here yesterday. Along with this." Daniel handed her an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. "Mrs. Baptiste, I cannot undo what my sister said to you. I cannot erase the hurt or the humiliation. But I can return what should never have left your family. This necklace represents survival. It represents women who refuse to break under impossible pressure. It represents a history I will never fully understand but deeply respect. Please accept it back with my sincere apologies and my commitment to do better. To be better. To raise my own children to see people as individuals rather than stereotypes. With profound regret, Trevor Ashford." Simone lifted the necklace from the box. It caught the morning light, throwing rainbows across the walls. She thought of Mama. Of all the women before Mama who'd worn this. Of the history it carried. "He really gave it back," she whispered. "He did." Daniel stood behind her, hands on her shoulders. "Some people can change, Simone. Not all. Maybe not most. But some." She turned to face him, necklace still in her hands. "Help me put it on." He fastened the clasp. The necklace settled against her collarbone, cool metal warming to her skin. She looked in the small mirror above the desk. There she was. Simone Baptiste. Granddaughter of a cleaning woman. Wife of a billionaire. Wearing a necklace that had witnessed generations of survival. "I look like her," Simone said softly. "Like Mama. You are her." Daniel kissed her shoulder. "You're everything she hoped you'd become." Simone touched the necklace, felt its weight, and made a decision. "I'm ready to go back to Boston," she said. "I'm ready to face whatever comes next." "Are you sure?" "No." She turned to face him. "But I'm doing it anyway. Because that's what we do. We survive. We fight. We love despite everything trying to stop us." Daniel pulled her close. "Then let's go home." They packed quickly, loaded the car, and drove back toward the city. Toward the chaos. Toward the questions and the judgment and all the complications of being black and successful and in love in a world that still struggled with all three. But this time, Simone wore her grandmother's necklace. Carried her history. Remembered where she came from and why it mattered. Some fights were worth having. Some love was worth fighting for. And some truths needed to be spoken, no matter how much they cost. Monday morning came with unexpected sunshine. Simone stood in the Harvest Foundation office in downtown Boston, surrounded by the familiar chaos of nonprofit work. Phones ringing. Jennifer coordinating with a university about new scholarship recipients. The smell of coffee and the hum of people trying to change the world one student at a time. It felt normal, grounding, real in a way the past few days hadn't been. "You sure you're ready for this?" Jennifer asked, appearing at Simone's office door with 2 mugs of coffee. "We can reschedule the staff meeting." "No." Simone accepted the coffee gratefully. "We need to address what happened. The team deserves to hear from me directly." 20 minutes later, Simone stood in front of her staff. 12 people who dedicated their lives to this work, who believed in the mission enough to accept non-profit salaries and long hours. They looked at her with concern, curiosity, and something else. Pride. "So," Simone began, "I imagine you all saw the news." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. What happened Friday night was difficult, painful, and unfortunately not uncommon for people who look like me in spaces dominated by wealth and whiteness. She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But I want to be clear about something. I'm okay. Shaken, yes. Angry, absolutely. But okay." "We're here for you," said Marcus, their program director. A young black man from Dorchester who'd been one of Hope House's first scholarship recipients. "Whatever you need. What I need is for us to keep doing this work. To remember why we started. Because kids like I was, like Marcus was, like thousands of others are, they need to see people who look like them succeeding. They need to know that education can open doors, even when those doors try to slam shut." She told them about the $300,000 raised from the auction. About the additional $50,000 donated since the article. About universities reaching out to partner with them, corporations wanting to fund scholarships, people across the country inspired by her story. So yes, what happened was terrible. But look at what came from it. Look at how many more students we can help now. Simone felt her voice strengthen. "We're turning poison into purpose. That's what we do." The staff erupted in applause. Jennifer wiped her eyes. Marcus stood and started a chant that the others picked up. "Harvest strong! Harvest strong!" Simone felt something crack open in her chest. Not pain this time. Something warmer. Community. Belonging. Love. After the meeting, she returned to her office to find Daniel waiting. He held a paper bag from her favorite bakery. "Thought you might need lunch." He set the bag on her desk. "Also, I have news. Good news or bad news. Depends on your perspective." He sat in the chair across from her desk. Lydia Ashford checked herself out of McLean this morning. Her publicist issued a statement. Simone's stomach tightened. And Daniel pulled out his phone, read from the screen. Ms. Ashford deeply regrets her behavior at the Foundation Gala. She recognizes that her words caused significant harm to Mrs. Baptiste and perpetuated racist assumptions. She is committed to personal growth, education, and making amends. She asks for privacy during this time of reflection and healing. That's very carefully worded. Her publicist probably wrote it. Daniel set his phone down. But there's more. She's requested a meeting with you. Private. No press. No lawyers. Just the two of you talking. Simone stared at him. She wants to meet with me? Through her brother. Trevor called me this morning. Said Lydia is genuinely devastated by what happened and wants to apologize face to face. He emphasized that there's no pressure, that you absolutely don't have to agree, but she wanted to ask. What do you think? I think it's your choice. Daniel leaned forward. But I also think you don't owe her anything. Not your time, not your emotional labor, and definitely not forgiveness. Simone pulled the necklace from beneath her blouse, touched the cool stones. What would Mama do? Mama would listen. Mama always believed in giving people chances to do better, even when they didn't deserve them. But Mama had also been tired. So tired from a lifetime of giving grace to people who rarely returned it. I'll think about it, Simone said finally. They ate lunch together in her office, Daniel telling her about the meetings he'd rescheduled to be with her, Simone updating him on foundation business. Normal conversation. Normal life. As if the world hadn't tilted on its axis 3 days ago. Her phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor Pembroke. Tea at my house tomorrow, 3 p.m. I have a proposal for you. Simone showed Daniel the message. Eleanor's been around forever, he said. If she has a proposal, it's worth hearing. The next afternoon, Simone drove to Eleanor's home in Brookline. A restored Victorian, elegant but not ostentatious. The kind of house that whispered old money instead of shouting it. Eleanor answered the door herself, no staff, wearing a lavender cardigan and practical shoes. Come in, dear. I've made chamomile tea. Do you like chamomile? I do. They settled in Eleanor's sunroom, surrounded by plants and afternoon light. Eleanor poured tea with steady hands, added honey to Simone's cup without asking because somehow she already knew. You're wondering why I invited you, Eleanor said. The thought crossed my mind. I'm 82 years old. I've been working in philanthropy for 60 years. I've seen progress and backsliding, hope and disappointment, change and stagnation. Eleanor sipped her tea. What happened to you at that gala wasn't unique. It wasn't even unusual. And that breaks my heart. Simone waited. Let the elderly woman find her words. I've spent my life writing checks and attending events and thinking I was helping. But Friday night, watching you stand there with such dignity while that woman attacked you, watching everyone else remain silent including me, I realized something. Eleanor set her cup down. I've been complicit. We've all been complicit. We claim to support diversity and inclusion, but we don't defend it when it's under attack. You apologized, Simone said quietly. You followed me to the bathroom. That mattered. It wasn't enough. It's never enough. Eleanor leaned forward. So I want to do more. I want to create a fellowship program. Full scholarships plus mentorship for Black students pursuing careers in philanthropy, nonprofit leadership, and social justice. I'm pledging $5 million over 5 years. And I want the Harvest Foundation to administer it. Simone's breath caught. $5 million? I'm old. I'm rich. And I'm tired of watching talented young people struggle in systems designed to exclude them. Eleanor smiled. I've already spoken to my lawyers. The paperwork is being drawn up. The fellowship will be called the Gloria Baptiste Fellowship, named after your grandmother. If you'll accept. Tears burned Simone's eyes. Eleanor, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me get this right. Say you'll make sure we're not just throwing money at a problem but actually creating pathways for change. Eleanor reached across and took Simone's hand. And say you'll forgive an old woman for taking too long to do the right thing. There's nothing to forgive. Simone squeezed her hand. Thank you. For seeing. For caring. For this. They spent the next 2 hours discussing details. Eleanor had thought through everything. Funding structures. Selection criteria. Mentorship programs connecting fellows with established leaders in philanthropy. I want to announce it at the spring benefit, Eleanor said. Give you time to set up the infrastructure. Make it public so other donors see that this work matters. When Simone left Eleanor's house, she sat in her car for 10 minutes just breathing. $5 million. A fellowship named after Mama. Opportunities for students who'd faced the same barriers she had. Something good growing from something painful. She drove straight to the cemetery in West Roxbury where Mama was buried. The headstone was simple gray granite with just her name and dates. Gloria Baptiste, 1945 to 2017. Beloved grandmother. Simone knelt in the grass, not caring about her pants, and pressed her palm to the cold stone. They're going to name a fellowship after you, Mama. $5 million for kids like me. Kids you would have loved. Her voice cracked. I wish you were here. I wish you could see what your life meant. What your love built. The November wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere nearby, a bird sang. Simone closed her eyes and let herself feel Mama's presence the way she sometimes could in quiet moments. That steady strength. That unshakable belief that Simone was destined for something bigger than their circumstances suggested. "I wore your necklace," she whispered, "when that woman tried to make me feel small. I wore it and remembered you, and I didn't break. I wanted to, but I didn't." She stayed until the sun started setting, talking to the grandmother who'd shaped her, who'd loved her, who'd given her everything including the courage to stand in rooms that didn't want her. When she finally drove home, Daniel was in the kitchen cooking dinner. Pasta with vegetables, simple and perfect. He looked up when she entered, took one look at her face, and pulled her into his arms. "Rough day. Beautiful day." She held him tight. "Eleanor is creating a fellowship. $5 million. Named after Mama." Daniel pulled back to look at her. "Simone, that's incredible. It feels like something's shifting. Like maybe what happened at that gala is actually going to lead somewhere good." She touched his face. "Does that make me naive?" "It makes you hopeful. There's a difference." They ate dinner on the couch, plates balanced on their laps, talking about the fellowship and logistics and dreams for what it could become. The kind of conversation Simone loved. Building something meaningful. Creating opportunities that would ripple outward for generations. Her phone buzzed during dessert. A number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Hello, Mrs. Baptiste?" A woman's voice. Shaky. Familiar. "This is Lydia Ashford." Simone sat up straight. Daniel immediately moved closer, listening. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me. I wouldn't want to talk to me either." Lydia's voice was raw. "But I needed to call. To ask if you'd be willing to meet with me. Please. I need to apologize properly. Face to face. Not through statements or lawyers or my brother." Simone's first instinct was to say no. To hang up. To protect herself from more potential pain. But she thought of Eleanor's words. About complicity. About creating change instead of just reacting to harm. "One meeting," Simone said finally. "Public place. Neutral territory. And if you say anything that feels like justification or excuse-making, I'm walking out." "Yes. Anything. Thank you." Lydia sounded like she was crying. "Thank you for even considering this." They made plans for Thursday afternoon at a quiet cafe in Cambridge. After Simone hung up, she looked at Daniel. "Tell me I didn't just make a huge mistake." "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice." He pulled her close. "The same choice you always make. To believe in the possibility of people being better than their worst moments." "What if she disappoints me?" "Then she disappoints you, and you walk away knowing you gave her a chance she didn't deserve but you offered anyway." He kissed her forehead. "That's who you are, Simone. That's why I love you." They finished dessert in comfortable silence. Later, getting ready for bed, Simone caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She looked tired. The past week had aged her in ways that went beyond physical exhaustion. But she also looked strong. Like Mama. Like a woman who'd survived and would continue surviving. Daniel appeared behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "We're going to be okay," he said softly. "I know." And she did. Because whatever happened with Lydia, whatever challenges came next, she had this. This love. This partnership. This man who saw all of her and chose her every single day. "I love you," she said. "I love you more." Still not possible. They climbed into bed, tangled together the way they always slept, and Simone felt herself relaxing for the first time in days. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. But tonight, she was safe. Loved. Home. Outside their window, Boston sparkled with 1,000 lights. Inside their room, darkness held them gently. And somewhere in between, hope took root and began to grow. Thursday arrived too quickly. Simone spent the morning at the foundation, throwing herself into work. Reviewing scholarship applications. Meeting with university partners about the new Gloria Baptiste Fellowship. Anything to avoid thinking about the afternoon ahead. Jennifer noticed. She always noticed. You don't have to do this, she said, appearing in Simone's office doorway at noon. You can cancel. No one would blame you. I'd blame me. Simone closed her laptop. I need to see this through. Whatever this is. Want me to come with you? I can sit at another table. Back up if you need it. Simone smiled. I love you for offering. But no. This is something I need to do alone. The cafe was in Harvard Square, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. Small. Quiet. The kind of place where serious conversations happened over overpriced coffee. Simone arrived 10 minutes early, ordered chamomile tea, and claimed a table in the back corner. She wore jeans and a cream sweater, her hair in a simple braid. No armor. No performance. Just herself. Lydia arrived exactly on time. She looked terrible. Hair pulled back severely, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. She wore a plain black coat over gray pants. Nothing designer. Nothing flashy. Like she deliberately stripped away every marker of wealth and status. Thank you for coming, Lydia said, hovering by the table. Can I sit? That's why we're here. Lydia sat carefully, like the chair might collapse under her. She'd ordered nothing. Her hands twisted in her lap. I don't know where to start, she said finally. How about the beginning? Simone kept her voice level. Why did you say what you said to me at that gala? Lydia flinched. I thought you were out of place. Because I'm black. Yes. The word came out strangled. Not just because you're black. Because you were black and looking at an expensive necklace and my brain went to a place it shouldn't have gone. What place exactly? I assumed you were there by accident. That someone had given you a ticket or you'd won some contest. I assumed you couldn't afford anything at that auction. I assumed you didn't understand how those events worked. Lydia's voice cracked. I assumed all of that based on nothing but the color of your skin. Simone sipped her tea. Let the admission sit between them. I've been in therapy every day since it happened, Lydia continued. Talking about implicit bias and systemic racism and all these concepts I thought I understood but clearly didn't. And you know what the worst part is? Tell me. I thought I was being nice. Helpful, even. Warning you about prices, suggesting other areas. In my mind, I was doing you a favor. Tears spilled down Lydia's face. I didn't see the cruelty. I didn't see the racism. I just saw myself as someone helping a confused person navigate an unfamiliar world. Even though I was calm, composed, examining that necklace like someone who understood exactly what they were looking at. I know. Lydia wiped at her face roughly. Nothing about your behavior suggested confusion or discomfort. I projected that onto you because it fit the narrative in my head about who belongs in those spaces and who doesn't. Simone set her tea down. Do you know what that necklace was? I read about it. After. Victorian era. Your grandmother's. It's the only thing that survived 4 generations of my family being systematically stripped of everything else. Slavery. Jim Crow. Economic discrimination. Housing discrimination. Every system designed to keep black families poor. Simone's voice remained steady, but her hands shook slightly. My great-great-grandmother wore that necklace on her wedding day in 1882. She was born enslaved. Freed at age 7. Managed to build a life anyway. That necklace was her one piece of beauty in a world that told her she deserved nothing beautiful. Lydia covered her face with her hands. My grandmother wore it while cleaning your kind of people's houses for 40 years. She scrubbed toilets and washed floors and raised me on poverty wages, but she kept that necklace. Never sold it. Never pawned it. Because it proved we were more than what the world tried to make us. Simone leaned forward. And you looked at it and suggested it was beyond my reach. That I should look at cheaper items. That I didn't belong. I'm sorry. Lydia's voice was muffled by her hands. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't undo it. Sorry doesn't erase the humiliation of standing in that ballroom while you question my right to exist in that space. Sorry doesn't fix the fact that 300 people watched you attack me, and most of them said nothing. Lydia lowered her hands. Her face was blotchy, mascara smeared despite wearing none. You're right. Nothing I say will fix it. But I need you to know I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to be better. Why? Simone challenged. Because you got caught. Because it became public? Would you be here if no one had photographed that moment, if the article had never been written, if your life hadn't imploded? Lydia opened her mouth, closed it, struggled visibly with honesty. I don't know, she admitted finally. I want to say yes. I want to believe I would have examined my behavior and my assumptions even without public consequences. But truthfully, I don't know if I would have. The humiliation forced me to look at myself in ways I'd been avoiding for years. At least she was honest. My therapist asked me something, Lydia continued. She asked if I'd ever had a meaningful conversation with a black person. Not transactional. Not employer-employee. Not charity recipient. Just two humans talking about real things. She laughed bitterly. I couldn't think of one. Not one genuine conversation in 41 years. That's not an excuse. I know it's not. But it's an explanation for how I could reach 41 without examining beliefs I didn't even know I held. Lydia's hands twisted together. I grew up in a bubble. Prep schools. Country clubs. The vineyard in summer. Everyone looked like me, thought like me, believed the same things. And anyone who didn't fit that mold was either invisible or an outsider. Plenty of people grow up in bubbles and don't become racist. You're right. Lydia met her eyes. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. I'm just trying to explain how I became someone capable of treating you the way I did. Because I need to understand it myself so I can change it. Simone studied the broken woman across from her. Saw genuine anguish. Genuine shame, but also saw the limits of that transformation. Do you know why I donated that necklace? Simone asked. To help fund scholarships. Partially, but also because holding on to things, even precious things, can trap you in the past. I wanted my grandmother's legacy to be about creating futures, not preserving history. She paused. Trevor bought it back for me. $300,000 plus he still donated that amount to the foundation. I know. He told me. Lydia's voice was soft. He's been incredible through all this. Supportive. Honest about how ashamed he is of me. Of himself for enabling me for so long. Your brother seems like a good person. He is. I'm not. Lydia said it flatly. I used to think I was. Thought I was charitable and kind and open-minded. But I was none of those things. I was a woman clinging to inherited status as my only identity, terrified of anyone who might threaten the hierarchy that put me near the top. Near the top. Trevor's the successful one. The achiever. I'm just his sister who married badly twice and has nothing to show for her life except a trust fund and bitterness. Lydia looked away. Seeing you that night, so confident and elegant, examining that necklace like you owned the room, it triggered something ugly in me. You had everything I pretended to have. Real success. Real purpose. A loving marriage. And it made me want to cut you down. The honesty was brutal. Raw. Simone hadn't expected this level of self-awareness. What do you want from me? Simone asked. Forgiveness. Absolution. Permission to move on with your life. I don't know. Lydia finally looked at her again. Maybe I just needed you to see that I know what I did. That I'm not making excuses or playing victim. That I'm sitting with how ugly I was and trying to become someone different. Trying isn't the same as doing. I know. They sat in silence. The cafe hummed around them. Students studying. Couples talking. Life continuing indifferent to this small moment of reckoning. Simone thought of Mama. Of Eleanor. Of every person who'd given her grace she hadn't earned but desperately needed. Of the fellowship being created in Mama's name. Of the possibility that pain could transform into purpose. But she also thought of every other time she'd swallowed anger to make white people comfortable. Every time she'd been the bigger person, offered understanding, carried the weight of racism with dignity while her attackers walked away unburdened. She was tired of being gracious. Tired of doing the emotional labor of forgiving people who hurt her. Tired of being strong when she wanted to be angry. "I don't forgive you," Simone said quietly. Lydia's face crumpled. "I don't forgive you because forgiveness isn't something you're owed. It's something I might choose to give someday if and when I'm ready. But right now, I'm still hurt, still angry, still processing the fact that you looked at me and saw nothing but stereotypes." "I understand. Do you?" Simone leaned forward. "Do you understand what it's like to walk through the world in my skin? To constantly prove your worth? To have people assume the worst about you before you open your mouth? To be excellent and still be questioned?" "No, I don't." Lydia's voice broke. "I'll never understand that. But I'm trying to learn. I'm reading and listening and talking to people who can help me see my blind spots. I know it's not enough. Nothing will ever be enough. But I'm trying." "Then keep trying." Simone stood, gathering her coat. "Not for me. Not for redemption or absolution or to make yourself feel better about what you did. Try because being actively anti-racist is the only way forward. Try because the world needs fewer people like who you were and more people willing to do the hard work of change." "Wait." Lydia stood too. "Is that it? Are we done?" "I think so. Can I ask you one more thing?" Simone waited. "How do you do it?" Lydia's voice was desperate. "How do you face people like me, deal with constant microaggressions and blatant racism, and still show up with grace and strength? How do you not become bitter and angry and closed off?" Simone considered the question. Considered lying. Considered performing strength she didn't always feel. Instead, she chose truth. "Who says I don't become angry? Who says I'm not bitter sometimes? Who says I don't go home and cry or rage or want to burn it all down?" She held Lydia's gaze. "The difference is I don't let that anger destroy me. I channel it into purpose. Into helping kids who face the same barriers I did. Into building a world where maybe, eventually, fewer people will have to have conversations like this one." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." Simone's voice softened slightly. "But it's also necessary. Because if I don't fight, who will? If I don't show up, who does? If I let racism make me small, then it wins." She turned to leave. "Mrs. Baptiste?" Lydia's voice stopped her. "Thank you. For meeting me. For seeing me even when I refused to see you." Simone didn't respond. She walked out of the cafe into cold November air that felt like freedom. Her phone buzzed immediately. "Daniel. How did it go?" She typed back. "Hard. Honest. Over. Coming home. Yes. Need you. I'm here. Always." Simone drove through Cambridge toward Boston, past Harvard Yard where students rushed between classes, past the Charles River where rowers cut through gray water, past neighborhoods transforming from old to new. She'd done what she set out to do. Faced Lydia. Spoken truth. Refused to make her comfortable. But she didn't feel victorious. She felt empty. Wrung out. Like she'd given something she couldn't afford to lose. Her phone rang. "Jennifer. Hey, how are you?" "I don't know." Simone's voice cracked. "I told her I don't forgive her. I was honest about how much it hurt. But Jen, I don't think she really gets it. I don't think she can. Maybe she can't. Maybe the best we can hope for is people trying to do better even when they don't fully understand why." Jennifer paused. "You did enough, Simone. You don't have to fix her. I know. But I'm tired of being the one who has to explain racism to racists. I'm tired of doing that work. Then stop. Stop bearing that burden. Let other people carry it for a while." Simone pulled into their building's parking garage, killed the engine, sat in silence. "I'm going up to Daniel. I'll call you tomorrow. Love you, sis." "Love you too." The elevator ride felt eternal. But then the doors opened and Daniel was there, waiting for her like he'd known exactly when she'd arrive. He didn't ask questions. Just pulled her into his arms and held her while she finally let herself break. "I hate this," she sobbed into his chest. "I hate that I had to sit across from her and explain basic human decency. I hate that she gets to learn and grow while I'm left processing trauma. I hate that I'm expected to be gracious when I want to be furious." "Then be furious." Daniel stroked her hair. "Stop performing grace. Stop being strong. Just be exactly what you are right now." So she did. She cried angry tears. She raged against the unfairness of it all. She let herself feel every bit of hurt she'd been holding back. And Daniel held her through all of it, absorbed her pain, witnessed her breaking, loved her without requiring her to be anything but honest. When she finally quieted, exhausted, he carried her to the couch and wrapped them both in blankets. "I'm proud of you," he said softly, "for facing her, for speaking truth, for refusing to make it easy. I didn't forgive her. Good. She doesn't deserve your forgiveness yet. Maybe ever. Does that make me hard? Unforgiving? It makes you human. It makes you someone who values herself enough to not give away grace to people who haven't earned it." Simone closed her eyes. Let his words settle over her like armor. She'd survived the meeting, spoken her truth, refused to carry Lydia's guilt. Tomorrow she'd be strong again. Tomorrow she'd return to fighting for change. But today, wrapped in her husband's arms, she let herself be tired and angry and done performing for people who would never fully understand. Today, that was enough. 3 weeks passed in a blur of work and healing. Simone threw herself into setting up the Gloria Baptiste Fellowship, designing application processes, recruiting mentors, building infrastructure that would outlast her. Work became sanctuary, purpose became armor. But some nights, she still woke gasping from dreams where she stood in that ballroom again, exposed and diminished, while hundreds of faces watched and said nothing. Daniel always knew, would pull her close, whisper reminders that she was safe, that she was loved, that she'd survived worse and would survive this too. December arrived with the first real snow. Boston transformed into something cleaner, softer. The city Simone had built her life in sparkled with holiday lights and the promise of new beginnings. She was in her office reviewing fellowship applications when Jennifer knocked. "You have a visitor." Simone looked up. "Who?" "Lydia Ashford." Everything in Simone went cold. "What?" "She's in the waiting area. Says she knows she doesn't have an appointment, but she's hoping you'll give her 5 minutes. Jennifer's expression was carefully neutral. "Want me to send her away?" Simone's first instinct was yes. She'd done the meeting, said what needed saying. She was done with Lydia Ashford and that entire painful chapter. But curiosity won. What could Lydia possibly want now? 5 minutes, Simone said. "And leave the door open." "You got it." Lydia appeared moments later, bundled in that same plain black coat. She looked better than at the cafe. Color in her face. Less haunted, but still diminished somehow, like wealth and status had been stripped away, leaving just a woman trying to figure out who she was without them. "Thank you for seeing me," Lydia said from the doorway. "I know I have no right to your time. You have 4 minutes and 30 seconds left." Lydia stepped inside but didn't sit. "I wanted to tell you something. I'm leaving Boston." Simone hadn't expected that. Leaving. Moving to Portland. Maine, not Oregon. Lydia smiled faintly. "My grandmother left me a small house there. Nothing fancy. Just a cottage near the water. I'm going to renovate it myself. Do the work with my own hands. Try to build something instead of just inheriting things." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I wanted you to know I'm not running away. Not hiding." Lydia finally met her eyes. "I'm choosing to remove myself from spaces where I caused harm, where my presence would be a constant reminder of that night. Trevor will stay. He's doing good work with the diversity initiatives at his company. But me, I need to start over somewhere no one knows what I did." Simone studied her. That sounds like running away. Maybe it is. But maybe it's also giving you and people like you space to exist without having to see the person who hurt you every time you attend an event. Lydia's hands twisted together. My therapist says I need to distinguish between guilt and shame. Guilt is good. It motivates change. Shame is destructive. It makes me the victim of my own bad behavior. Sounds like expensive therapy. It is. But it's the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. Simone felt an unwelcome flicker of sympathy. Crushed it down. She didn't owe this woman empathy. Before I leave, I wanted to give you something. Lydia pulled an envelope from her coat pocket. It's a check. $100,000. Made out to the Harvest Foundation. Not from my family money. From the sale of my apartment. My jewelry. Things I owned outright. She set the envelope on Simone's desk. I don't want your money, Simone said immediately. It's not about what you want. It's about what those kids need. Lydia's voice was firm. I can't undo what I did. But I can help fund the fellowship named after your grandmother. I can make sure something good comes from my ugliness. You think you can buy redemption? No. Lydia shook her head. I know I can't, but I can contribute to change. I can use my privilege, since I have it, to support the work you're doing. And then I can get out of the way. Simone stared at the envelope. $100,000. 50 more scholarships. 50 more students who might escape poverty. 50 more lives transformed. She thought of Mama, who'd accepted help wherever it came, who'd swallowed pride to feed her granddaughter, who'd understood that survival sometimes meant taking what you could get from imperfect sources. Leave it, Simone said finally. But don't expect gratitude. Don't expect me to call you a good person or tell you you're forgiven. Take your money as a transaction. A debt payment. Nothing more. I understand. Lydia's voice was quiet. Can I tell you one more thing? 2 minutes. That necklace. Your grandmother's. I've been researching Victorian jewelry. Learning about the craftsmanship, the history, the meaning behind pieces like that. Lydia's eyes were wet. Women wore those necklaces as statements. As claims to beauty and value in a world that tried to strip both away. Your great-great-grandmother wearing that on her wedding day, 7 years out of slavery, was an act of defiance. Of hope. Of refusing to be nothing. I know my own family history. I know you do. But I needed to say it out loud. To acknowledge what I didn't see that night. I saw an expensive object. You saw generations of survival. Lydia wiped at her eyes. I'm leaving because I need to learn to see people instead of categories. And I can't do that here, where every room reminds me of who I was. Simone felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness. Not even sympathy. But recognition. This woman was trying. Failing in some ways, succeeding in others, but genuinely trying to become someone different. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. I hope Portland is good to you, Simone said. It wasn't kindness exactly. More like acknowledgement. Thank you. Lydia turned to leave, then paused. Mrs. Baptiste? You were right. At the cafe. When you said you didn't forgive me. That forgiveness wasn't owed. I remember. I'm not asking for it now either. But I want you to know that conversation changed something in me. You refusing to make me comfortable, refusing to do the work of absolving me, it forced me to sit with what I'd done. To really sit with it. Lydia's voice strengthened. So thank you. For your honesty. For your anger. For not letting me off easy. She left before Simone could respond. Jennifer appeared in the doorway moments later. You okay? I don't know. Simone picked up the envelope. $100,000. A fortune built from selling possessions, from dismantling a life of excess. She's moving to Maine. Starting over. Good. She should start over. Preferably somewhere far from you. Simone opened the envelope. A check. A note in careful handwriting. This doesn't fix anything. But maybe it helps build something better. Thank you for being who you are, even when people like me made it harder. LA. What do you think? Simone showed Jennifer the check. I think we deposit it and use it to change lives. Her motivation doesn't matter. The impact does. Simone nodded slowly. Jennifer was right. They'd built the Harvest Foundation on pragmatism as much as idealism. Money was money, and kids needed opportunities regardless of where funding came from. But taking Lydia's money felt like accepting something she couldn't quite name. Complicity, connection, the idea that transformation was possible even for people who'd caused real harm. Her phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on screen. Hey, she answered. How's your day? His voice was warm, familiar, home, complicated. Lydia Ashford just showed up at my office. Silence. Then, do I need to come there? No. She left. She's moving to Maine. Gave us a $100,000 check. Simone leaned back in her chair. I don't know how to feel about any of it. You don't have to feel anything. You don't owe her processing or understanding or acceptance. I know. But Daniel, what if she really is trying to change? What if refusing to acknowledge that growth makes me as rigid as she was judgmental? Those aren't the same things. His voice was gentle but firm. You maintaining boundaries isn't the same as her perpetuating racism. Don't let guilt make you confuse the two. Simone closed her eyes. He was right. He was always right about this. Come home early tonight, she said. I need you. Already planned on it. I love you. I love you more. After she hung up, Simone sat with the check in her hands. She thought of Mama, of Eleanor, of every person who'd helped her along the way, some with pure motives, others with complicated ones. She thought of the kids who'd benefit from this money. Students who'd never know it came from a woman who'd publicly insulted a black philanthropist. Students who'd just know someone believed in them enough to fund their education. She made her choice. Jennifer. She called out. Her friend appeared instantly. Yeah. Deposit the check. Set up 50 more fellowship slots. Use every penny for students who need it most. You sure? No. Simone smiled tiredly. But I'm doing it anyway. Because this work is bigger than my feelings about one broken woman trying to atone. Jennifer crossed the office and pulled Simone into a hug. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm tired. You're both. That evening, Simone left work early for the first time in weeks. She stopped at the grocery store, bought ingredients for Daniel's favorite meal, and went home to cook. She needed her hands busy. Needed the ritual of chopping vegetables and measuring spices. Needed something that had clear steps and predictable outcomes. Daniel found her in the kitchen an hour later, surrounded by the smell of garlic and herbs. You cooked. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. That's how I know you're processing something big. Lydia's check. Her apology. The idea that people can change. Simone leaned back into him. I keep thinking about what Mama would do. What would she do? Take the money. Use it to help kids. Pray for Lydia's soul but not waste energy on whether she deserved forgiveness. Simone turned to face him. Mama was practical about survival. She took help where she could find it and didn't agonize over whether the source was pure enough. Sounds wise. It was survival. There's a difference. Simone touched his face. But I have choices Mama never had. I can afford to be selective about where help comes from. I can afford to maintain boundaries. So what are you choosing? Both. Taking her money because kids need it. Maintaining boundaries because I need them. She kissed him softly, using what she gave while owing her nothing in return. That's perfect. Daniel held her close. That's exactly right. They ate dinner on the couch, plates balanced, talking about everything except Lydia. The foundation's growth. Eleanor's fellowship. Holiday plans. Normal conversation. Normal life. Later in bed, Daniel asked the question she'd been avoiding. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? Simone considered. Maybe. Someday. If she does the work. If she becomes someone genuinely different. If enough time passes that the wound doesn't feel so fresh. She rolled to face him. But Daniel, I don't think I need to forgive her to move forward. I can carry what happened, learn from it, use it to fuel the work, and still refuse to absolve her. Those things can coexist. You're allowed to stay angry. I know. She pressed her forehead to his. But I'm also allowed to transform that anger into something that builds instead of destroys. That's what Mama taught me. Turn poison into purpose. Make pain mean something. Daniel kissed her. Long and slow and full of 8 years of choosing each other against every obstacle. When they broke apart, Simone felt something settle inside her. Not peace exactly. Not resolution. But acceptance. Acceptance that some wounds took time to heal. That some people deserved second chances while others earned nothing. That she could be both gracious and boundaried, both forgiving and fierce. She'd survived Lydia Ashford. Would continue surviving whatever came next. Because that's what Mama's granddaughters did. They survived. They fought. They loved. And they refused to let hate make them small. Spring arrived in Boston like a promise kept. 4 months had passed since the gala. 4 months of healing and building and learning to carry what happened without letting it define her. Simone stood in front of her bedroom mirror on a Saturday morning in late April, fastening Mama's necklace around her throat. The diamonds caught sunlight streaming through windows, throwing rainbows across the walls. She wore a deep purple dress, fitted and elegant, her hair in natural curls that fell past her shoulders. Today was the spring benefit. The official launch of the Gloria Baptiste Fellowship. You look beautiful. Daniel appeared behind her, adjusting his tie. Navy blue suit, crisp white shirt, the quiet confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. Mama would be so proud. I hope so. Simone touched the necklace. 4 generations of survival resting against her collarbone. This feels full circle somehow. Wearing her necklace to announce a fellowship in her name. It is full circle. He kissed her shoulder. You ready? I am. The benefit was at the Boston Public Library, in the grand hall with soaring ceilings and marble floors. Eleanor had insisted on the venue. Let's make this moment worthy of Gloria's legacy, she'd said. They arrived early. Jennifer was already there, coordinating with caterers and checking microphones. She looked up when Simone entered, broke into a huge smile. There she is. The woman of the hour. This is Eleanor's event, Simone protested. It's your story. Eleanor's just funding it. Jennifer pulled her into a hug. We have 47 confirmed fellowship applicants already. 47 students who'll get full scholarships plus mentorship. Because of you. Because of what happened that night. Simone felt tears threaten. Pushed them back. She'd cried enough. Today was for celebrating. Guests began arriving at 6. A different crowd than the November gala. More diverse. Younger faces mixed with established donors. University representatives. Non-profit leaders. People who believed in the work, not just the spectacle. Eleanor found Simone within minutes, pulled her aside. I have news. The elderly woman's eyes sparkled. 3 more major donors have committed to the fellowship. We're up to $8 million now over 5 years. We can fund 100 full scholarships. Eleanor. Simone could barely breathe. That's incredible. It's necessary. Eleanor squeezed her hand. What happened to you that night woke people up. Forced us to confront complicity we'd been ignoring. Now we're doing something about it. The program began at 7. Eleanor took the stage first, spoke about philanthropy's responsibility to address systemic barriers. Then Trevor Ashford, who'd been invited despite everything, spoke about his company's new diversity initiatives and his personal commitment to change. I failed someone I should have protected, Trevor said, voice steady but emotional. I watched my sister attack a woman whose accomplishments dwarf our family's. And I said nothing. That silence was violence. I won't be silent again. The applause was warm, appreciative. Trevor had done the work these past months, implemented real change at Ashford Technologies, funded scholarships himself, shown up repeatedly to events like this, learning and listening instead of just writing checks. Then it was Simone's turn. She walked to the stage, feeling 300 eyes on her. But this time was different. This time, she knew exactly who she was and why she belonged. Good evening. Her voice carried clearly through the hall. For months ago, I stood in a ballroom not far from here and someone told me I didn't belong. That I should look at cheaper items. That security should question how I got past the door. The room went silent. She said those things because I'm black. Because when she saw me examining my grandmother's necklace, her brain made assumptions based on nothing but the color of my skin. Simone touched the necklace now. This necklace has survived slavery, the Great Depression, decades of systemic racism designed to keep black families poor. It survived because the women who wore it refused to let go of beauty, even when the world tried to strip everything else away. She could see people leaning forward, hanging on every word. That night was painful, humiliating. It ripped open wounds I thought had scarred over. But it also did something unexpected. Simone's voice strengthened. It woke people up. It forced conversations that needed to happen. And it led to this. The Gloria Baptiste Fellowship, named after my grandmother, who cleaned houses for 40 years and raised me to believe I deserved every opportunity one could fight for. The applause started. Simone raised her hand gently, asking for quiet. This fellowship will fund 100 full scholarships over the next 5 years. Students from underserved communities who have the talent, the drive, and the potential, but not the financial resources. Students like I was. Like my grandmother was. Like so many brilliant young people who deserve a chance to prove what they can become. She paused, gathering herself. I want to be clear about something. This fellowship exists because of pain, yes. But more importantly, it exists because of hope. Because I refuse to let racism win. I refuse to let that night make me smaller or bitter or closed off. Simone looked out at the crowd. I choose to transform pain into purpose. To turn an attack into an opportunity. To make sure my grandmother's name is associated with love and possibility instead of hate and exclusion. The applause was thunderous now. People standing. Eleanor wiping tears. Jennifer beaming. Daniel watching her with such pride it made her heart ache. So here's what I want to say to every young person who'll benefit from this fellowship. Simone's voice cracked slightly. You belong. Everywhere you choose to stand. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let their assumptions become your limitations. Walk into every room like you own it. Examine every opportunity like it was made for you. Because it was. You were made for greatness, and no one gets to tell you different. She stepped back from the microphone as applause washed over her. Found Daniel in the crowd. He was crying openly, not even trying to hide it. After the program, people swarmed her. Donors wanting to contribute more. Students thanking her for creating opportunities. Strangers sharing their own stories of discrimination and survival. One young woman, maybe 19, with dark skin and nervous eyes, approached hesitantly. Mrs. Baptiste? I'm Keisha. I'm one of the fellowship recipients. Keisha. Simone took her hands. I've read your application. Perfect SAT scores. First in your family to attend college. You're remarkable. I just wanted to say thank you. Keisha's voice trembled. I've been working 2 jobs to save for school. My guidance counselor said I should consider community college instead because I couldn't afford a 4-year school. But because of you, because of your grandmother, I'm going to Howard University in the fall. Full scholarship. I get to be a doctor. Simone pulled her into a hug. You're going to be an incredible doctor. And Keisha, when you are, remember this moment. Remember that someone believed in you. Then turn around and believe in someone else. I will. I promise. After Keisha left, Simone found herself alone for a moment in a quiet corner. She closed her eyes, touched Mama's necklace, and whispered, "Did we do good, Mama? Is this what you wanted?" She felt no answer. Just the weight of diamonds and sapphires against her skin. Just the knowledge that she'd taken something painful and made it matter. "There you are." Daniel found her, handed her champagne. "You were magnificent up there. I was terrified. Couldn't tell." He clinked his glass against hers. "To Gloria Baptiste. To survival. To love that refuses to quit." "To love," Simone echoed. They stood together, watching the benefit unfold around them. Jennifer talking animatedly with university representatives. Eleanor holding court with other major donors. Trevor in deep conversation with a group of students, listening more than talking. "Do you think she knows?" Simone asked quietly. "Lydia, in Maine. Do you think she knows what came from that night?" "Probably." Trevor would have told her. Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Does it matter?" "I don't know. Maybe not." Simone sipped her champagne. "I've been thinking about forgiveness lately. About whether I'll ever get there. And I think maybe forgiveness isn't one moment. It's 1,000 small choices. Choosing not to carry rage. Choosing to build instead of destroy. Choosing to believe people can grow even when their growth doesn't undo harm." She looked up at him. "I'm not there yet. Maybe never will be completely. But I'm choosing not to let what happened poison the rest of my life." Daniel kissed her forehead. "That's all anyone can ask." The benefit continued for 2 more hours. By the time they left, Simone was exhausted but full. Full of hope. Full of purpose. Full of the knowledge that something good had grown from something terrible. They drove home through Boston streets now familiar and beloved. Past the harbor. Past the common. Past the library where Simone had spent countless hours as a grad student. Too poor to afford textbooks, photocopying chapters 1/4 at a time. This city had given her so much. Education. Career. Love. But it had also taken. Demanded constant proof of worth. Questioned her presence in spaces she'd earned access to. She was learning to hold both truths. That Boston could be home and battlefield simultaneously. That love could coexist with struggle. That she could be grateful and angry, hopeful and wounded, strong and vulnerable. At home, they changed into comfortable clothes. Simone carefully removed the necklace, placed it in its velvet box. Tomorrow it would go into the safe. But tonight, she wanted to hold it a little longer. "Tell me something," she said, curled up against Daniel on the couch. "If you could go back to that night at the gala, knowing everything that would happen, would you change anything?" Daniel thought for a long moment. "I'd punch Lydia Ashford in the face." Despite everything, Simone laughed. "Daniel." "What?" "You asked." He smiled, then grew serious. "But honestly, no. I wouldn't change it. Because as painful as that night was, look at what it created. The fellowship. The conversations. The change. Sometimes the hardest moments become the most transformative ones." Very philosophical. "I have my moments." He pulled her closer. "What about you? Would you change it?" Simone considered. Thought of Keisha, going to Howard to become a doctor. Thought of Eleanor, finally confronting her complicity. Thought of Trevor, doing real work toward change. Thought of the 100 students who'd benefit from the fellowship over the next 5 years. "No," she said finally. "I wouldn't change it. Because Mama didn't raise me to avoid hard things. She raised me to transform them." They sat in comfortable silence as night fell over Boston. Outside their windows, the city sparkled with lights. Inside their home, love created its own warmth. Simone's phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. $8.2 million raised tonight. $8.2 million. You did that. I love you so much. Another text, this one from an unknown number. Mrs. Baptiste, this is Trevor Ashford. Thank you for letting me be part of tonight. I've told Lydia about the fellowship. She asked me to tell you she's glad something beautiful came from something ugly. She's still in Maine. Still working on herself. Thought you'd want to know. Simone showed Daniel the messages. You going to respond? To Jennifer, yes. To Trevor, maybe later. She set her phone down. I'm learning that I don't owe anyone immediate responses. That I get to process at my own pace. Good. Daniel kissed the top of her head. What do you need right now? This. You. Home. Simone closed her eyes. Tomorrow we'll go back to fighting. Back to building. Back to changing the world one scholarship at a time. But tonight, I just want to be here with you. Then that's what we'll do. They stayed on the couch until well past midnight, talking about everything and nothing. The fellowship's future. Vacation plans for summer. Whether they were ready to start thinking about kids. The mundane and the meaningful all tangled together the way life actually was. Eventually, they made their way to bed. Simone fell asleep in Daniel's arms, dreaming of Mama. In the dream, they were dancing in that Detroit kitchen again. Mama young and laughing, wearing the necklace, singing along to Aretha Franklin. You done good, baby girl, Mama said in the dream. You took what could have broken you and made it beautiful. That's what we do. That's who we are. Simone woke with tears on her face but peace in her heart. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear. She and Daniel went for a run along the Charles River, the April air finally warm enough to promise summer. They stopped for breakfast at a small cafe where no one recognized them, where they were just another couple enjoying pancakes and coffee. Normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. On Monday, Simone returned to the office to find her desk covered in application packets. Students hoping for the fellowship. Students believing in second chances and new possibilities. She spent the day reading their stories. Kids from poverty. Kids from broken homes. Kids who'd survived things that should have destroyed them but somehow found strength to keep going. She saw herself in every application. Saw Mama. Saw generations of black excellence fighting to exist in a world determined to suppress it. And she knew, bone deep, that this work mattered. That transforming her pain into purpose meant those kids might face fewer Lydia Ashfords. Might walk into more rooms where their presence wasn't questioned. Might build a world where belonging wasn't conditional on skin color or wealth or who your family was. It wouldn't happen overnight. Maybe not even in her lifetime. But it would happen. Because she refused to let it not. That evening, she wore Mama's necklace to dinner with Eleanor. Just the two of them at a quiet restaurant, planning the fellowship's future. You know what I love about you? Eleanor said over dessert. You could have let that night make you bitter. Instead, you let it make you bolder. Mama always said bitterness was poison you drink hoping someone else dies. Simone smiled. I choose life. I choose love. I choose to believe we can be better than our worst moments. We can be, Eleanor agreed. But only if people like you refuse to let us settle for less. They parted with promises to meet again soon. Simone drove home thinking about legacy. About the life she was building. About the love she was choosing every single day. Daniel was cooking dinner when she arrived. The penthouse smelled like garlic and wine and home. He turned when she entered, smiled that smile that still made her heart skip. How was Eleanor? Good. Great, actually. We're planning a mentorship weekend for the fellows this summer. Simone wrapped her arms around him from behind. I love you. I love you more. Still not possible. They ate dinner on the balcony, watching the sun set over Boston Harbor. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, painting the city in colors that promised tomorrow would come, no matter what today had held. What are you thinking about? Daniel asked. Everything. Nothing. Simone leaned her head on his shoulder. How we survived. How we're still surviving. How love keeps winning even when hate tries so hard to destroy it. Love always wins, Daniel said softly. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not easily. But eventually, always. Simone touched Mama's necklace one more time. Felt the weight of history and hope combined. She'd walked through fire and come out stronger, had faced hatred and chosen grace, had been broken and put herself back together into something even more beautiful than before. This was survival. This was victory. This was love. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 1 year later, Simone stood in the Harvard Faculty Club, surrounded by the inaugural class of Gloria Baptiste Fellows. 20 students, all black, all brilliant, all headed to colleges they dreamed of but never thought possible. Keisha was there, home from her first year at Howard, glowing as she talked about organic chemistry and her volunteer work at a free clinic in D.C. "Mrs. Baptiste saved my life," Keisha was telling a reporter from the Boston Globe. "Not just financially. She showed me I deserved space at the table. That changed everything." Simone watched from across the room, Daniel's hand in hers. 1.5 years since that November night. 18 months of healing and building and learning what victory actually looked like. "You're doing it again," Daniel murmured. "Doing what?" "That thing where you stand back and watch instead of taking credit." He squeezed her hand. "Get in there. These kids want to thank you." Before she could move, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown main number. "Mrs. Baptiste, this is Lydia Ashford. I know I have no right to contact you directly. Trevor gave me your number and said I could use it only if absolutely necessary. I wanted you to know that I've spent the past year working with a racial justice organization here in Portland, teaching anti-racism workshops to people like who I was. I'm not asking for forgiveness or acknowledgement. Just wanted you to know I'm trying to make sure no one else becomes me. I hope you're well. I hope the fellowship is everything your grandmother would have wanted. L.A." Simone stared at the message, felt Daniel reading over her shoulder. "You going to respond?" "I don't know." She looked up at him. "What do you think?" "I think you get to decide. No pressure either way." Simone thought for a long moment, then typed, "Lydia, keep doing the work. Not for me. For everyone who comes after. That's the only amends that matters." She hit send before she could second-guess it. "There," she said. "Done. How do you feel?" "Lighter." And she did. Like setting down a weight she'd been carrying without realizing it. Jennifer appeared at her elbow. "You need to see this." She handed Simone an iPad showing an email. "Dear Mrs. Baptiste, my name is Catherine Baptiste. I believe you know me as your husband's mother." Simone's breath caught. Daniel tensed beside her. "I'm writing because I owe you an apology that's 18 months overdue. Longer, truthfully. 8 years overdue. I watched the footage from the gala. Not just the incident with Ms. Ashford, but your speech at the spring benefit. I've read about the fellowship. I've seen what you've built from pain that I, in my own way, contributed to. I was wrong about you. Completely, utterly wrong. You weren't the gold digger I accused you of being. You weren't the interloper I treated you as. You were, and are, exactly what my son saw from the beginning. An extraordinary woman who makes the world better simply by being in it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm donating $1 million to the Gloria Baptiste Fellowship in honor of the grandmother who raised you and the woman you've become. I hope someday you might allow me the privilege of knowing you properly. Not as the daughter-in-law I rejected, but as the remarkable human you are. I understand if that day never comes. But the offer stands, whenever you're ready. With profound regret and deeper respect, Catherine Baptiste." Simone read it twice, then handed the iPad to Daniel. She watched his face cycle through shock, anger, disbelief, and finally something softer. "Hope, maybe." $1 million, he said quietly. "She's serious." "She hurt me," Simone said. "For 8 years, she made me feel like I wasn't enough." "I know. But she's trying. Like Lydia. Like Eleanor. Like everyone who's chosen growth over comfort." Simone looked up at him. "Maybe that's enough to start. You want to meet with her?" "Eventually. Not today. Not next week. But someday." She touched Mama's necklace, which she now wore often instead of keeping it locked away. Mama always said forgiveness was something you did for yourself, not for the person who hurt you. Maybe I'm ready to stop carrying that particular weight. Daniel pulled her close. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I know. That's why I can decide from strength instead of fear. The fellowship ceremony began shortly after. Eleanor gave the opening remarks, her voice still strong at 83. Trevor spoke about his company's continued diversity initiatives, how 12% of Ashford Technology's workforce was now black professionals, up from 3% 18 months ago. Change is possible, Trevor said. But only when people with privilege choose to dismantle the systems that benefit them. I'm not asking for credit. I'm asking others with resources to join this work. Then Simone took the stage. The room quieted instantly. A year and a half ago, I stood in a ballroom and someone told me I didn't belong. Today, I stand here with 20 brilliant students who know, without question, that they belong everywhere. She looked at the fellows. You are the answer to that night. You are proof that pain can become purpose. That hate can be transformed into hope. She paused, gathering herself. I want to tell you about my grandmother, Gloria Baptiste. She cleaned houses for 40 years. Never complained. Never gave up. Never let poverty convince her that her granddaughter deserved anything less than excellence. Simone's voice strengthened. She couldn't give me money. She couldn't give me connections. But she gave me something more valuable, the absolute certainty that I was worthy of every dream I dared to dream. The students leaned forward, hungry for this story. So here's what I want to say to you. This fellowship isn't charity. It's not a handout. It's the world finally catching up to what your grandmothers and mine always knew, that you are brilliant, capable, and destined for greatness. The world tried to keep you out. We're kicking the door down. The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, Simone found herself surrounded by fellows asking questions, sharing dreams, seeking advice. She gave what she could. Phone numbers, book recommendations, the names of mentors. But mostly she gave belief. You've got this, she told each one. And when it gets hard, when people question whether you belong, remember this moment. Remember that someone who looked like you, who came from where you came from, built something beautiful out of pain. You can too. As the event wound down, Eleanor pulled Simone aside. I have news, the elderly woman said, eyes twinkling. 3 more major donors have committed. We're up to $12 million now. We can fund the fellowship for 10 years instead of 5. Eleanor. Simone hugged her. You're changing lives. We're changing lives. Plural. Eleanor held her at arm's length. And I'm not done. I'm putting the fellowship in my will. When I die, another 20 million goes to ensure it continues in perpetuity. Tears burned Simone's eyes. You don't have to do that. I absolutely do. This work outlives all of us. That's the point. Eleanor's voice was fierce. Your grandmother's name will be funding scholarships long after we're both gone. That's legacy, Simone. That's love that never dies. That evening, back at the penthouse, Simone and Daniel sat on their balcony watching the sun set over Boston Harbor. The same view they'd watched 18 months ago when the world felt like it was ending. Your mother's donation, Simone said. Do we accept it? That's entirely your call. But it affects you. She's your mother. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I want you in my life more than I want her approval. That's never changed. But if you're willing to give her a chance, if her growth seems genuine, then yes. I'd like you to meet her. I'd like us to try being a family. Even after everything, people change, Simone. You've proven that over and over this past year. Lydia. Trevor. Eleanor confronting her complicity. Even the students who benefit from the fellowship, they're proof that circumstances don't have to define destinies. He took her hand. My mother was wrong. Deeply, hurtfully wrong. But if she's genuine about making amends, maybe she deserves the same chance you gave everyone else. Simone thought about it. about grace and boundaries, about forgiveness that protected instead of diminished, about the difference between accepting an apology and allowing someone back into your life. Lunch, she said finally. Public place. You present. If she says anything that feels like justification for how she treated me, I'm done. But I'll give her one conversation. Thank you. Daniel kissed her temple. Not for my sake. For yours. Because holding on to that anger was hurting you. I'm not promising forgiveness. I'm not asking for it. Just openness to the possibility. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. Simone thought about the past 18 months. The pain that had transformed into purpose. The hate that had been answered with love. The night that had tried to break her but instead revealed exactly how unbreakable she was. Her phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. Mrs. Baptiste, I just wanted to say thank you again. Not just for the scholarship. For showing me what's possible when you refuse to be made small. I'm going to be a doctor. And then I'm coming back to Boston to work in underserved communities. I'm going to be you when I grow up. Simone showed the text to Daniel. He smiled. That's your legacy right there. Not the fellowship. Not the money. That girl, becoming who she's meant to be. 20 girls, Simone corrected. This year. 100 over the next few years. Thousands eventually, if Eleanor's estate planning works out. Thousands of Keishas. Thousands of futures that would have been stolen by poverty and systemic racism. Daniel pulled her close. Mama would be proud. I hope so. Simone touched the necklace. I really hope so. They stayed on the balcony until stars appeared. Made love slowly, tenderly, reconnecting in the way couples do when life has tested them and they've survived together. Fell asleep tangled in each other, safe and whole and loved. 3 weeks later, Simone met Catherine Baptiste for lunch at a quiet restaurant in Brookline. Daniel sat beside her, silent support. Catherine arrived looking older than Simone remembered. Smaller somehow. Diminished by the weight of her own choices. Thank you for coming, Catherine said, voice shaking. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, Simone replied honestly. But I'm trying to practice the grace I wish I'd been shown. Over the next 2 hours, Catherine talked. About her own upbringing in a world of rigid social hierarchies. About fear that her son's choices would diminish their family's standing. About racism she'd absorbed without questioning and assumptions she'd never examined. None of that excuses what I did, Catherine said. None of it makes my treatment of you acceptable. I'm just trying to explain how someone could be so cruel to someone so extraordinary. I'm not extraordinary, Simone said quietly. I'm just a woman who refused to shrink. That's what makes you extraordinary. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I see that now. Too late, but I see it. The lunch ended with no grand reconciliation. No tearful hugs or promises of instant family bonds. But there was honesty, acknowledgement, the possibility of something better, given time and continued effort. In the car afterward, Daniel asked, How do you feel? Okay, Simone said, surprising herself. She has a long way to go. But she's trying. That's more than I expected. More than she deserved. Maybe. But I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it because carrying anger toward your mother was poisoning our future. Now I can let it go. That summer, the fellowship expanded to include a mentorship weekend. 20 students came to Boston for 3 days of workshops, networking, and connection. Simone watched them bond, watched them realize they weren't alone, watched them become a community. On the final night, they gathered in the foundation's office. Someone brought a cake. Someone else brought music. They celebrated until midnight, dancing and laughing and dreaming out loud about futures that suddenly seemed possible. Keisha found Simone near the end of the night. Can I ask you something? Always. How do you keep going? When the world keeps trying to break you down, how do you keep believing it can be better? Simone thought of Mama. Of the necklace. Of every person who'd helped her along the way and every person she was now helping in return. Because giving up means they win, she said simply. And I refuse to let them win. We refuse. All of us, together. Keisha hugged her tightly. Thank you. For everything. After everyone left, Simone and Daniel cleaned up the office together, throwing away plates, taking down decorations. The mundane work of love. This is it, isn't it? Daniel said, tying off a garbage bag. This is what victory looks like. Not some grand moment. Just consistent, daily choice to keep building something better. This is it. Simone smiled. Not perfect. Not finished. But good. Really, truly good. They drove home through Boston streets now completely familiar. The city that had challenged her, hurt her, and ultimately let her transform pain into purpose. The city where Mama's legacy now lived in perpetuity, funding dreams for generations to come. At home, Simone carefully removed the necklace and placed it in its box. Tomorrow she'd wear it again. She wore it often now. Not as armor, but as reminder. Of where she came from. Of what she'd survived. Of love that refused to die. In bed, wrapped in Daniel's arms, Simone felt something settle deep in her bones. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. Not the end of pain, but the transformation of it into something that mattered. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you more, Daniel whispered back. Still not possible. But maybe it was. Maybe love was infinite. Maybe it grew every time you chose it over hate, hope over bitterness, building over destroying. Maybe that was the real victory. Not the fellowship or the money or even the students whose lives were changing. But the daily choice to love fiercely in a world that kept trying to teach them hate. Simone fell asleep smiling, dreaming of Mama dancing in that Detroit kitchen, wearing the necklace, singing about respect and resilience and refusing to be broken. You done good, baby girl, Mama said in the dream. You done real good. And for the first time since that November night 18 months ago, Simone believed it completely. She had done good. Was doing good. Would continue doing good. That was enough. More than enough. That was everything. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story moved you or if it touched your heart, hit that like and subscribe button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, that standing up for yourself matters, and that sometimes the people who hurt us can become the people who help us heal. Also, share your thoughts in the comments section. We love hearing from you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. Meanwhile, don't go anywhere yet. Click on the video showing on your screen to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it. Until next time.